Chapter 821. After Han Zhao's fleet left planet Pangurus, the players of the various guilds that were left behind on the planet could not wait to take action. The four major guilds pretended to be uninvolved while they secretly gathered the members of the other first-rate guilds. Among them were the Rainstorm Club's Drizzle River, the Fanatics Club's God's Forbidden Zone, the Heavenly Palace's Spirit Celestial Lake, and Rivervale's Rivervale. These first-rate guilds had around 60 to 70 members that were left behind on planet Pangurus, and they were considered workshop players. There were two types of guild members. The first was the ordinary players that were attracted by the guild's reputation and resources. The second type was the various workshops that took on the hard work of the guild and collected a certain amount of fees. Hence, they were more organized. Hundreds of guild members gathered together to discuss. The Russians and Australians don't have enough manpower, and each club has less than 20 people. Both sides have more than 100 people. However, they did not split up, and over 100 of them gathered together to mine. Although the Russians and Australians had colluded with the four major guilds, they were secretly taking precautions. The Russians were led by the Strength and Glory Guild, while the Australians were led by the Kangaroo Boxing Guild. The players of the various guilds were gathered at two locations to mine. Adding up to 100 people from each country, they were close to the number of first-rate guilds in China. This seemed to be safer and would prevent them from being attacked. However, they did not expect that the first-rate guilds in China would work together to deal with them. After discussing for a while, they decided on a plan. They had the absolute advantage in terms of manpower, and they decided to split up and attack the resource points of the Russians and Australians. In a certain mine base at the Kangaroo Boxing Guild's resource point, dozens of Australian players were wearing worker bee armor and mining diligently. They stored the resources in the armor and transported them back to the small guild warehouse on the surface. There were a few warehouses that belonged to different guilds in Australia. There were also workshop players patrolling the area. Although they worked together for safety, it did not mean that they would share the resources. These warehouses were portable warehouses that the various guilds had bought from the army, and they were not cheap. They were equivalent to their base in the resource point. Suddenly, the patrolling players' expressions changed as they saw a group of well-equipped first-rate guild players appear in their line of sight. These first-rate guild players were currently charging towards them from afar, their thrusters leaving trails of flame in their wake. "Gather! Someone is attacking our resource point." The club guilds from Australia hastily recalled their manpower, but it was too late. 200 to 300 players from the first-rate guilds rushed into the resource point and tore apart the players guarding the warehouse. The Australian players who had rushed back from the mines immediately engaged the players from the first-rate guilds. A group battle erupted, and both sides immediately engaged in a chaotic battle. Bang, bang, bang. Pugilists used all kinds of strange abilities, filling the entire field with colorful energy. Mages kept casting spells one after another. Psychics crazily used psychic attacks to cause AoE damage, and they were all treated as backline slices. Metahumans used all kinds of strange abilities, filling the entire field with colorful energy. Mages kept chanting and casting spells one after another, while psychics crazily used psychic attacks to cause AoE damage. They were treated as backline slices among them. The mechanic class caused the most damage. They used all kinds of weapons to attack. Blue energy beams crisscrossed, and when they hit the target, energy explosions would occur. Armor-piercing bullets shot out like torrents, splashing mud everywhere, breaking trees, and leaving fine pinholes on various objects. Version 3.0 happened to be the powerful version where the mechanic class shone. At this time, the mechanic class finally learned the skill that allowed them to improve their combat style: compressed orb technology. Compressed orbs opened up in the field one after another, turning into turrets, small mechanical soldiers, mechanical traps, and all kinds of mechanical equipment. Be it in terms of wealth, combat power, or numbers, the first-rate guilds had an absolute advantage. They quickly destroyed the Australian players who had stayed behind and sent people to block the respawn point and kill them. On the other hand, they started to attack the few Australian guild warehouses and destroyed them very quickly. The resources that the Australian players had collected during this period were all taken away as spoils of war. This resource point became a mess. After killing all the Australian players, the first-rate guilds immediately retreated with the spoils of war. Hundreds of souls floating above the respawn point sent them off with grief and anger. On the other hand, the Russian resource point also received the same treatment and was completely looted. Our resource point has been destroyed. In one of the transport ships in the fleet, Vodka was shocked when he received the message from the players who had stayed behind. After hearing that it was done by the first-rate guilds in China, he was furious and immediately sent a message to the guild leaders of Long Sky and Dynasty to question them. Why did you attack our resource point? Jade Green Sky pretended to be confused. What are you talking about? When did we do such a thing? You have to have evidence for everything. Otherwise, I'll sue you for slander. Just now, the resource point we left on the planet was destroyed by your Chinese guild. The players who stayed behind were blocked at the resurrection point and killed until their resurrection count ran out. They couldn't resurrect in the game for 6 days. Why did those Chinese guild members attack us? You can ask them. We didn't do it. Jade Green Sky held back his laughter. We bought equipment from you guys, and you promised to provide us protection. You guys went back on your word. Vodka said angrily. Jade Green Sky snorted. It wasn't as if he didn't know about the little tricks of these foreign guilds. On the surface, they bought some equipment through their channels, but in private, they had already found other Chinese players to cooperate with and enjoy a 10% discount while keeping a secret from them. Morning Snow Twilight Frost chuckled. We didn't know about this beforehand. After all, those first-rate guilds have their own thoughts and are not our subordinates. We have to ask them about the situation. Don't worry, we'll try our best to convince those guilds. That's great. Vodka nodded. After hanging up, Vodka was unhappy. He only felt that something was amiss. No matter how he looked at it, these first-rate guilds working together to deal with them had something to do with the 4 biggest guilds. It might happen again in the future. Thinking about that, he contacted the captain of the players who had stayed behind and said, after you guys revive, I'll transfer you some money. Buy some warning devices in the army, such as automatic cannons, traps, laser arrays, and so on. Set them up next to the new resource point. The more you buy, the better. Don't be afraid of spending money. By the way, give up your current location and find a more dangerous place to mine. On the other side, Jade Green Sky and Morning Snow Twilight Frost were also discussing. This attack can make them hesitate and spend more money on unnecessary defensive measures. Those first-rate guilds did not intend to attack frequently in the first place. We can say that we convinced those guilds and did not go back on our words. After these people build new resource points and recover for a while, we'll organize another attack. At that time, they'll have a new batch of resources in their resource points, and we'll be able to snatch them. If we continue to harass them like this, their resource points will be very limited. As long as we make them angry, we can start a large-scale guild war and use our advantage in numbers to wipe out the backbone of their guilds. Insidious. You're the insidious one. Jade Green Sky gave him a thumbs up. Morning Snow Twilight Frost shook his head. It's a pity that they did not send their pro players over. Otherwise, our guilds could help the club get rid of some of their opponents. Pro players were the pillars of the club, so the club placed great importance on their safety. Naturally, they would not dare to send their characters to other people's territory. The reason why the Chinese clubs targeted the foreign guilds was also to protect their own pro players. If the foreign guilds were allowed to gain a foothold in their territory, the possibility of them secretly causing trouble for the Chinese pro players was not low at all. Others could cross star fields to come over, but they could not. The Chinese guilds were actually in a passive position, which was why they had decided to work together to compete with the foreign guilds and protect their own interests. A few days later, in another star zone, the Great Cosmos Core fleet, led by Kikuga, was slowly moving toward the beacon. Other than the main ship that was dozens of kilometers long, there were more than 30 Gar battleships. All the warriors who had been awakened were training. There were more than 1 million people. Inside the main ship, Kikuga rubbed his palms with excitement. He loved plundering and looked forward to the arrival of war. How much longer until we reach the beacon? Kikuga asked several times every day. Reporting to the leader, the beacon's position has been moving for the past few days. I think this is the enemy's trick to confuse us, so we are now moving towards the position where the beacon was first activated. It's not too far away. The leader of the operators had a helpless look on his face. He had to repeat his answer several times every day. The faster, the better. I can't wait. Kikuga's tone was rough. At this time, another operator exclaimed, "Big leader, there are 3 unknown targets approaching us. They can't be meteorites, right?" Kikuga was stunned. In his impression, very few people could travel through space like them. Therefore, his first thought was that they were meteorites or comets. They don't look like meteorites. They're flying toward us. Sir, I request to enter alert mode. Making a fuss over nothing, Kikuga mumbled and waved his hand. Alert, then. The fleet quickly activated all kinds of weapons and waited. Not long later, the 3 spaceships that Psionic Prime and the others were on appeared and slowly stopped, facing Kikuga and the others. Are they really spaceships? Kikuga was surprised. I guessed right. The operator hurriedly said, "They can track our beacon. Their technology is very advanced, and they can travel in the universe." Kikuga sized up the 3 spaceships for a while and suddenly laughed. "What are you afraid of? Look at those 3 spaceships. They're so small. How much combat power can they have?" Indeed, the spaceships of Psionic Prime and the others were very small compared to Kikuga's main ship that was dozens of kilometers long. In Kikuga's worldview, the size of a spaceship equaled its combat power. Also, look, they only have 3 spaceships, not even 1/10 of ours. We can easily kill them. What are you panicking for? You're embarrassing me. Kikuga shook his head. Hearing this, everyone suddenly felt that it made sense and felt much more at ease. Sir, what should we do now? Kikuga said casually. Looking at their spaceships, we can tell that they're just a small civilization that has just started exploring the universe. They don't know what fear is, so they dare to track our signal without any fear. Humph! As their seniors, we have to teach them a lesson and let them know the taste of fear. At this moment, another operator smiled and said, "Big leader, they sent us a message. They want to communicate with us." Hearing this, everyone laughed and felt that Kikuga's guess was right. Only a civilization that had just started exploring the universe would be so naive. Did they think that they could communicate in the universe? What did they say? Let me see. They said that they're from the Black Star Corps. They want us to put away our weapons and surrender immediately. Before this person finished, he started laughing. As if infected by his laughter, almost everyone in the control room could not help but laugh. The room was filled with a joyful atmosphere. Ha ha! Kikuga laughed so hard that he could not stop. Quick, reply to my message. Reply to what? Ask them if they've heard of the Great Cosmos Corps. Ha ha ha! Kikuga laughed so hard that tears almost came out of his eyes. Black Star Corps? What the hell? Never heard of it? Do they think they're very famous? Don't they know that the Great Cosmos Corps is the overlord of this universe? They want us to surrender? He had never heard such a funny joke before. Kikuga laughed so hard that he almost choked. He only calmed down after a while and said, "These arrogant natives are really the source of joy. They always make me happy." Before he finished, he wanted to laugh again. "Big leader, are we going to attack? Kill them? No, don't kill them. Capture them and give them to the Dharch. The Dharch will definitely be amused by these guys." Kikuga laughed. Just as everyone was laughing nonstop, the operator captain suddenly felt his heart tremble. He realized a terrifying blind spot. When they came into contact with the natives, they could not communicate at all because of the language barrier. However, this is clearly the first time these natives have met us, so why do they know our language? Why can they communicate with us? He trembled. Just as he was about to report this anomaly, something strange happened to the 3 spaceships. The bellies of the 3 spaceships opened up and black machines poured out. All of a sudden, blue-gold lightning descended from the sky and struck every machine, causing a blinding light to erupt. What are these things? The smiles of Kikuga and the others disappeared. They looked at this scene in shock. The next moment, a silver beam of light shot out, instantly piercing through the main ship's shield. It pierced through the main ship's hull, which was dozens of kilometers long, and left behind a large hole. The tough spaceship armor was like paper in front of this energy beam. Everyone was stunned, and before they could react, the violent shaking knocked them to the ground. A shrill alarm sounded, and the lights inside the spaceship turned bright red. Woo woo woo. Warning, warning. Shield broken. Hull damage increasing. 7, 8%. 8, 6%. 10, 3%. Please take measures as soon as possible. Please take measures as soon as possible. With one hit, the defense of the main spaceship was broken. Kikuga did not get up. He sat on the ground in a daze. His eyes were filled with confusion and disbelief. What just happened? Chapter 822. More than 30 battleships built with star system technology faced off against the mechanical life forms and troops that were buffed by Han Zhao's mechanical force through the quantum infinite distance transmission channel. The battle ended in an instant. This great Cosmos Core fleet was completely annihilated, and the main ship was blown up into a firework in space. Before the main ship exploded, Kikuga saw that the situation was not good and tried to escape in an escape pod in panic. However, the escape pod was destroyed by the Crimson Flames halfway. He originally wanted to break out of the encirclement with his extraordinary strength, but Psionic Prime kicked him to the brink of death and captured him. Psionic Prime and the others obeyed the order faithfully. Apart from destroying the battleships, they captured more than 10 upper echelons, including Kikuga. As for the millions of great Cosmos Core soldiers, they were annihilated along with the spaceship. Inside the spaceship, Kikuga and the operators were tied up by electromagnetic chains and fell to the ground. The shadow of the mechanical life forms covered everyone, making them so nervous that they almost could not breathe. Everyone looked at the tall mechanical life forms around them in fear and trembled. The mechanical life forms did not have any expressions, so no one could tell what these metal life forms were thinking. They were terrified and did not know what they were going to do next. However, Kikuga had a dazed expression. He still could not believe what had happened. His powerful fleet had been destroyed by these strange creatures so easily. Furthermore, he was completely powerless in front of these monsters. The great Cosmos Core respected the strong, and there were some supers among them. However, these people did not have systematic super knowledge, so every super was an extremely rare existence in the great Cosmos Core. They took up many important positions, and Kikuga became the leader of a squad because of his outstanding combat ability. He originally had a lot of confidence in his own strength, but this confidence was shattered by Psionic Prime's kick. His mentality collapsed, and he started to doubt his life. What kind of monsters were these metal life forms? He had plundered everywhere, but he had never seen a life form like this. What are you? Kikuga's teeth were chattering. I'm Psionic Prime, the first generation of Black Star's family, the leader of the mechanical army of the Black Star Corps, Psionic Prime slowly said. His emotionless electronic voice made everyone shudder. The Black Star Corps. This was the second time Kikuga had heard that name today. When he first heard it, he didn't think much of it and thought that it was just a bunch of natives. But now, his contempt had disappeared along with the fleet, leaving only panic and fear. Kikuga swallowed. Who was this Black Star Corps? How could they be so powerful? He had never heard of this force before. He only felt that it was extremely mysterious. Seeing Kikuga's face filled with fear and confusion, Psionic Prime tilted his head, raised his finger, and shot out a beam of light, forming a virtual screen in front of everyone. On the screen, images and paragraphs of text scrolled by. They were all the deeds and experiences of the Black Star Corps. Before the battle started, Philip had already hacked into the enemy's spaceship and recorded the language of the Great Cosmos Core into the database. That was why they could communicate now. Other than the language, the information stored in this fleet was also packaged and copied. The other party's virtual technology was extremely clumsy and had no secrets in front of Philip. He could come and go as he pleased. As a mysterious veil of the Black Star Corps was lifted, Kikuga and the others gradually opened their mouths wide in shock. The origin of the Black Star Corps brought them an unparalleled shock. Their worldview shattered. Godora, Dark Star, Bloodshed Land, Amethyst Civilization, Red Empire. There were so many organizations in the universe. How come I had never even heard of them? Beyond Grade A? In Kikaga's impression, Adamo was already the strongest person in this universe. He could not imagine how someone could have strength that far exceeded Adamo's. Kikaga originally imagined that Adamo would lead an army to take revenge for them. However, now that he saw the tip of the iceberg of the Black Star Corps, he only had one thought left. Please don't come over. They capture the captives? Han Xiao, who was commanding a fleet to explore another resource planet, received Psionic Prime's message and immediately retrieved the copied information from Philip's database. After taking a look, Han Xiao was stunned. I knew it. There are no hidden star system civilizations in this area. It turns out that it's those idiots from the Great Cosmos Corps. They actually have a team here. Han Xiao realized. I didn't expect the target of this hidden mission to be these people. They didn't meet the dynasty this time, but met me instead. It seems like they're very unlucky. Han Xiaoxin chuckled. The territory of the Great Cosmos Corps was mainly located in the center of the Geru star cluster. According to the normal exploration speed, it would take at least a few years for them to reach that location. However, they had met these people in advance. After eliminating one of their fleets, the other party would definitely investigate to the end. Although these people would not be able to affect him or the dynasty, it was not his style to ignore them. Han Xiao paced around with his hands behind his back. After pondering for a while, his eyes suddenly sparkled. That's right. These people have plundered many planets. They definitely have the information of these planets in their hands. Even if they destroy some of the planets, they will still be able to provide exploration points. This information is very valuable to the dynasty and can be considered a result. If he obtained this information, the total exploration points of the main storyline mission would definitely skyrocket. Furthermore, this would be considered a dazzling result, and the dynasty would also reward him. It would show that his exploration was smoother than Bloodshed Lands. This is a pretty good opportunity. Han Zhao's eyes narrowed. Although the Great Cosmos Corps was extremely weak, the information they had accumulated was very useful. He turned on his communicator and directly contacted the chief commander, Terakov, without Seneko. Black Star, why are you looking for me? Terakov was a little surprised. Normally, he only needed to discuss matters with Seneko, but Han Xiao directly contacted him. Could there be something special? Chief Commander, I have made a new discovery. Han Xiao slowly said, a few days ago, my army found a damaged beacon on planet Pangurus. After repairing it, I followed the beacon and sent a team to contact an unfamiliar native organization. He then explained the information about the Great Cosmos Corps and emphasized, according to the information, this organization lives by plundering and is active in the center of the Geru star cluster. They seem to have a lot of territories. The way I see it, the information they have on the planets will be of great help to our exploration. So that's the case. Tarakov's eyes flashed, and he pondered for a while before nodding. If you're not wrong, this will indeed allow us to obtain a large amount of information on the planets. This is not a small contribution. You went around Seneko because you want me to allow you to start a war? Han Xiao did not comment. In the dynasty's exploration rules, it was stated that they had to treat the natives peacefully. If they wanted to start a war with a star system level native organization, they would need the approval of the dynasty. If they wiped out the natives without permission, they would incur the dynasty's displeasure. After all, the star field belonged to the dynasty, and their allies were only helping to mine. Thus, if they wanted to wipe out the Great Cosmos Corps, they would need the chief commander's approval. As for wiping out the Great Cosmos Corps, Han Xiao did not have any psychological burden. These people lived by plundering and had enslaved dozens of native races. They were essentially galactic pirates, and as a galactic pirate hunter, his hands were itchy the moment he saw one. Terakov thought for a while before saying with a deep voice, I will write an order and send it to the Black Star Corps to express that your operation is my idea. I will leave the matter of plundering the information to you guys. There is no need to keep these people alive. Okay, Han Xiao nodded. I will report the truth. The Black Star Corps found this information. This is your work, so the credit will naturally be yours. Terekov pursed his lips and gave a friendly signal. After pausing for a while, Terekov suddenly changed the topic and said with deep meaning, of the 3-star clusters in the first phase, Renault is sandwiched in the middle. Its geographical location is superior, and it looks like it has the most resources. Thus, the upper echelons of the dynasty place the most importance on the development of the Renault star cluster. Why are we suddenly talking about another star cluster? Isn't Renault the area that the Bloodshed Land is exploring? Han Xiao was stunned. Terekov continued. As for the Geru star cluster, because it has more desolate universe belts, the upper echelons of the dynasty have the lowest expectations of Geru. This is also the reason why so few people chose to explore Geru. However, if the exploration of the Geru star cluster is successful, it will be a surprise to the dynasty. Han Xiaoxin understood. Terekov was revealing the direction of the dynasty and giving him a reminder. The dynasty placed more importance on Renault, so they paid the most attention to Renault. The Bloodshed Land would need more results to satisfy their expectations. As for the Geru that he explored, as long as the results were not too bad, it would be a surprise. It would be easier for him to obtain credit and be recognized by the dynasty. There were pros and cons seeing that Han Xiao was deep in thought. Terekov smiled and did not continue this topic. He purposely reminded Han Xiao not only to build a good relationship with Han Xiao, but also to motivate the Black Star Corps. This was one of his jobs as the commander-in-chief. Beacon of Unknown Origin completed. You have received 3 million EXP and 70 individual exploration points. You have received Bold Explorer Ability Fragment X1. 2 fragments are required to fuse them. With 1 fragment, at least I have a start. It's time to try and obtain the 2nd fragment. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. This was a pleasant surprise. Maple Moon's luck was really good. At this time, the notification on the interface did not end. You have triggered the faction mission, Annihilate the Great Cosmos Corps. Mission Introduction. The Great Cosmos Corps is a predator organization in the Geru Star Cluster. They have committed heinous crimes and have committed heinous crimes. The Black Star Corps is requested to annihilate this organization. Dynasty Exploration Army Commander-in-Chief Terekov. Note, this mission is a submission of Flickering World and will reward exploration points. Note, this mission is a faction series mission. You can complete the following requirements in this mission. Kill enemies. Kill 10 ordinary warriors of the Great Cosmos Corps. Reward, 750,000 EXP and 3 exploration points. Kill enemies 2. Kill 10 elite warriors of the Great Cosmos Corps. Reward, 1,500,000 EXP and 6 exploration points. Kill enemies 3. Kill 10 spaceship operators. Reward, 2 million EXP and 9 exploration points. Destroy ship I. Destroy a guard battleship. Reward, 3,600,000 EXP and 12 exploration points. Capture the King I. Kill 1 high-level combatant. Reward, 5,500,000 EXP and 24 exploration points. Capture the King II. Kill 1 big boss. Reward, 7 million EXP and 30 exploration points. Capture the King III. Kill Great Emperor Adamo. Reward, 22 million EXP and 60 exploration points. After the mission is completed, the rating will be based on the number of targets completed, and additional rewards will be given. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. This faction mission was issued by the dynasty to the entire Black Star Corps, which meant that other than him, the other army players could accept it as well. Han Xiao originally planned to send out his mechanical army to crush the Great Cosmos Corps, but he changed his mind at this time. Since the players could accept this mission, he would let the players do it. It would not be a problem to spend more time. This Great Cosmos Corps was not that strong, so it was just right to let the players deal with it. The average strength of the players was gradually increasing, so he might as well let the players destroy the Great Cosmos Core alone. Other than the spaceships, he did not plan to let any of the army NPCs move together. This was the first military operation that only the players were involved in. This would enrich the exploration of the flickering world for the players and give them a better experience. Compared to pure exploration, most of the players preferred combat. The people of the Great Cosmos Core were all walking EXP. Letting the players kill them would be like fertilizing the leaks. It was still the early stage of version 3.0, and there were no max-level players yet. Furthermore, players had to replenish their ammo in battle, and their equipment had to be repaired when their durability dropped. Repairs cost money, and even the smallest mosquito was meat. Furthermore, the number of players was so large that many a little makes a mickle, and sand makes a tower. The profit was not much worse than mining resource planets. Han Xiao had never neglected the army's firearms business. He was making money from war. Let the enemies gather together and take the initiative to attack. This will save some time. Han Xiao contacted Philip and gave Psionic Prime some instructions. Central area of the Geru Star Cluster, Great Cosmos Core headquarters. An adjutant hastily came to Adamo's seat and said with a trembling voice, "Why, Emperor? We have lost contact with leader Kikaga's troops." A cold light flashed through Adamo's eyes, and he said with a deep voice, "What happened?" They planned to invade the location of the beacon, but they encountered the enemy's troops midway and were annihilated. The adjutant said with a trembling voice, "Those enemies called themselves the Black Star Corps and sent us a message." Black Star Corps. Adamo frowned. What did they say? The adjutant turned on the device with trembling hands, opened the screen, and played the message. Psionic Prime's figure appeared on the screen, and beside him was Kikaga, who was trembling on the ground. "I'm the leader of the mechanical army of the Black Star Corps, Psionic Prime. People of the Great Cosmos Core, listen up. The Black Star Corps will flatten all your territories, kill all your warriors, and take everything from you. Tell your leader, Adamo, that the army commander will drink from his skull." As soon as he said that, Psionic Prime's arm turned into a sharp blade, flickering with psionic light, and slashed across Kikaga's neck. Pucci. Fresh blood spurted out, and Kikaga's head was separated from his body. His headless corpse fell to the ground and was still twitching. Psionic Prime's tone was emotionless. "Prepare for war." Then, the screen turned black, and all the messages were played. Adamo was originally looking at this video indifferently, but when Kikaga was beheaded right in front of him, his eyes flickered. "Emperor, this is a provocation." The adjutant carefully asked, "What should we do?" Adamo slowly stood up. "Gather all the fleets, all the combatants, and all the leaders." Adamo's tone was cold. "I'll go personally this time. They want war, so I'll give them war." Beacon of unknown origin completed. Maple Moon was in a dungeon with Pork Bun and the others, fighting a boss when the mission completion notification popped up on her interface. Her movements froze, and she was shocked. It's only been a few days, and the mission is already completed? I haven't even done anything yet. Maple Moon was shocked. She had handed the beacon to the army, as the mission suggested. Without a doubt, this was definitely the work of the faction. Giving the beacon to the army was indeed the right decision. Don't just stand there, quickly control the field. Port Bun was being swung around by the boss not far away, and his teammates were sent flying one after another. Maple Moon turned a blind eye to it and was immersed in her own thoughts. She had thought about it for the past few days. This mission only required her to come into contact with an unknown organization, so there would definitely be more to it. She immediately opened the faction mission list, and her eyes sparkled. As expected, there was indeed a follow-up mission, and it was a large-scale side mission issued by the dynasty. Great Cosmos Core, such a Chinibu name. So, it's a raider organization. The mission requirement is to eliminate this organization. Looks like it's a group mission. There will definitely be many people participating. Maple Moon pondered. "Help me out." The boss pressed Pork Bun to the ground and punched his face again and again. Poor Bun could only shout one word each time when the boss stopped punching, and his cries for help were very rhythmic. With the last bit of health gone, Pork Bun turned into a beam of white light and died. Maple Moon came back to her senses, raised her head, and threw out a bunch of compressed orbs. A large number of mechanical creations drowned the boss. Not long after, the boss with only half of its HP left was killed by Maple Moon, who displayed her prowess. After playing 3 versions, she realized that she was quite talented in this area, and her PK skills were getting better and better. Furthermore, this version was the strongest period for the mechanic class, so it was much easier to clear maps. Mechanics above level 100 were welcomed by most dungeon teams, and she was definitely the thigh of Pork Bun's team. Everyone exited the dungeon and returned to the army's battleship. Why did you get distracted? Pork Bun had a bitter look on his face. I didn't need to use one revival. Look at the faction mission. Pork Bun opened the faction interface in confusion and was overjoyed when he saw the mission: eliminate the Great Cosmos Core. He then opened the forums and realized that the army players were already cheering on the forums. Although the exploration of the main storyline mission was full of unknowns and was quite interesting, the players spent most of their time in the spaceship, so there were very few fighter jets. Most of the players were very itchy and could only fight in the dungeons. Now that they finally had a chance to fight in the main storyline mission, all the army players were excited. Wiping out a force sounded like a big mission. Chapter 823. Flickering World, Renault Star Cluster, Jeridan Star System. The joint exploration team of the Bloodshed Land and the Clink Kingdom was carrying out the plan step by step. The exploration fleet was like a paintbrush, slowly painting the gray, unexplored areas on the star map into green. The Stargate transportation network in the first star zone was gradually built. The planets were explored one after another, and the detailed information was recorded in the database. A large number of space buoys were left in the areas they passed. The exploration process on the Bloodshed Land side was peaceful. There were many resource-rich planets in the Jeridan Star System, but they had not encountered a single native civilization so far. Heber had been very idle for the past 10 days or so. The huge fleet worked according to the plan and did not need his command. He found a fixed star to train his energy. On a hot red fixed star in the star zone, Heber walked on the surface of the fixed star. The plasma energy of the fixed star formed a moving whirlpool and rotated around him. Under the stimulation of his energy, the cells in his body swallowed the intense radiation around him at a special rhythm and turned it into his own energy. Dazzling white patches appeared on his skin. The stellar furnace training method that Han Xiao had drawn came from Heber. Every pugilist was addicted to fitness. They would feel uncomfortable if they did not train for a day. Heber exhaled and expelled the redundant energy in his body. What he spat out was an energy arc that looked like a red fen wind. With a stomp of his legs, the huge force turned into a shockwave that spread out. The red energy whirlpool around him was instantly shattered. Heber was wrapped in dense flames. He broke through the strong gravitational force of the fixed star and shot up like a beam of light toward the universe. He quickly left the outer area of the fixed star and returned to the fleet outside. Walking into the spaceship, Heber casually put on his cloak and took the communicator from his subordinate. It was a message from Clint. "Your Excellency, Tyrant, we just received news that the Commander-in-Chief has issued an order to the Black Star Corps, asking them to eliminate a native organization. Attack the local forces?" Heber paused. "The Empire's exploration rules forbid the use of violence. Our men on Planet Lighthouse have found out that Black Star situation is special. That native organization is a group of raiders that occupied the center of the star cluster. They were coincidentally discovered by the Black Star Corps. The Dynasty wants the planet's information that this native organization has accumulated, so the Chief Commander allowed the Black Star Corps to eliminate this organization." Hearing this, Heber frowned. While they were developing steadily, the Black Star Corps had already started fighting in the jungle. If the Black Star Corps were to obtain the accumulated intelligence of the local forces, it would be a great achievement. They would be able to obtain a large amount of information on the planet. Originally, the star system they had explored was more fertile, and the results of their exploration could have easily surpassed the Black Star Corps. Unfortunately, Black Star's luck was a little too good. Heber shook his head. He did not want to see the Black Star Corps obtain this result, but he could only watch. He could not help but feel a little depressed. Your Excellency, Tyrant, our commander has a bold idea. This time, the Clink communicator spoke again. Dealing with Black Star again? That's right, we plan to. All right, cut the crap. Before the other party could finish, Heber interrupted him. I reached a truce agreement with the Black Star Corps, so I don't want to provoke them now. You guys better not do this either. It's meaningless. Then, he hung up the communicator. The Clink Kingdom was not willing to give up. They did not want their enemy, the Black Star Corps, to successfully obtain the credit. Heber did not want to mess around with them. The commander sent by Clint this time was from the radical faction of the Secret War, so he had a deep hostility toward Han Shao. He only wanted to steal the credit of the Black Star Corps and annoy Black Star. In Heber's eyes, not only was the success rate low, it would also cause the dissatisfaction of Black Star and the dynasty. Furthermore, it would not affect the Black Star Corps much, so it was not worth it. In the flickering world, Heber really did not want to be enemies with the Black Star. With such a huge cake, it would be better to just explore his own area. Trying to cause trouble for the Black Star Corps would only benefit the other dynasty allies who would participate in the exploration in the future. In Han Zhao's previous life, when the players entered the flickering world in version 4.0, many star clusters had already been explored. A large number of external organizations had entered and fought with each other, so the players had a lot of opportunities to fight. However, the situation was different now. It was only version 3.0 now. Han Shao allowed the players to come into contact with the storyline of the flickering world a version earlier. While gaining the upper hand, they also faced a different environment. In the early stages of exploration, there were only the Empire and their allies, and they were all on the same side. Therefore, the players lacked the storyline of faction wars and did not have many opportunities to fight. Therefore, as soon as the Destroy the Great Cosmos Corps mission was released, all the players who followed the Black Star Corps to explore the flickering world participated in this collective operation. There was no limit to the number of players, so most of them chose to participate. Han Shao was happy to see this happen. Because the players were in different exploration teams and were rather scattered, he casually arranged tens of thousands of spaceships to gather these players and form an expedition fleet. Only a small portion of this expedition fleet were army NPC warriors. Most of them were players. Because it would take quite some time to reach the central region of the Geru star cluster from here, Han Shao did not plan to let the players stay in the spaceship all the time, as that would be a waste of their high-quality labor. He planned to let this expedition team explore some of the planets along the way, making the best use of everything. Similarly, to make it easier for the players to return, they had to build stargates along the way. This way, the exploration plan of the Black Star Corps also changed. The main force would slowly explore the border star system. The first task force led by Hardaway would open up the path from the south to the east of the star cluster, and the second expedition team, led by the players, would open up the path from the south to the center of the star cluster. Therefore, the manpower of the army was once again thinned out. Han Shao ordered Sylvia, who was guarding the Shattered Star Ring headquarters, to send out the second fleet as soon as possible to replenish the manpower of the exploration team. After the development of the previous two versions, the players now had grade B combat strength. The millions of army players were more than enough to hold their own, so Han Shao was quite assured. As the versions changed, the strength of the players would become stronger and stronger. They would gradually grow into an organization that could not be ignored. They would gradually get rid of their identity as cannon fodder and slowly walk onto the stage of the universe. After sending out the players' expedition fleet, Han Shao did not bother about them anymore. He commanded the fleet to explore the resource planets one by one every day and use his free time to expand his mechanical army. No accidents happened during this period, and everything was peaceful. Another 2-star zones were explored, and in the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. On this day, Han Shao finally received a report from Philip. The players' expedition fleet heading toward the central region of the star cluster had finally met the scouts of the Great Cosmos Corps. The scouts were a team of players that were setting up space buoys. They only had a small reconnaissance spaceship that only carried about 300 players, while the scouts had 3 battleships. A battle broke out immediately. As soon as this scout fleet discovered this group of players, they immediately charged forward and engaged in a side battle, planning to capture the enemies with their advantage in numbers and interrogate the Black Star Corps. Cannonballs hit the shield of the small reconnaissance spaceship one after another, causing a series of explosions. However, the blinking shield did not move at all. Warning: spaceship under attack. Shield energy remaining 97. 1%. 99. 7%. Charging complete. Evaluating threat. Evaluation complete. The enemy's firepower is unable to break through our shield. Threat level: extremely low. The hundreds of players in the spaceship exchanged looks. The spaceships of the Black Star Corps used perfect star system technology and even reached the star cluster level in some aspects, such as energy cores, weapons, and shields. In comparison, the spaceships of the Great Cosmos Corps were too backward. Without a huge difference in numbers, there was no way they could pose a threat to the spaceships of the Black Star Corps. The boarding battle was exactly what the hundreds of players wanted. After the 3 enemy scout spaceships got close, they were about to dock. At this moment, more than 10 ejection charge cabins shot out from the side of the small scout spaceship, biting through the 3 enemy spaceships and embedding themselves into the hull of the enemy spaceship. The players in the charge cabins were like ferocious tigers that had just been unleashed, slaughtering the enemy spaceships. This group of players was basically all above level 100, and the enemy spaceships were basically ordinary people. Not long after, the hundreds of players cleared out the enemies within the enemy spaceships and obtained the 3 spaceships. On the other side, Adamo, who was leading the army, also received news that one of the scout fleets had lost contact with him. However, he did not receive the information that the scout fleets should have sent back, and the strength of the Black Star Corps was still unknown to him. Before the scout fleets lost contact, they only sent back news of encountering the enemy. After that, the connection was cut off. "We don't know how they fought with the enemy," the aide-de-camp said with confusion. "It's the same as that time with Kikiga." Adamo narrowed his eyes, and a rare solemn look flashed through his eyes. The enemy's quantum technology might surpass ours. When the battle broke out, Philip had hacked into the enemy's artificial intelligence through the quantum network and forcefully blocked the enemy's communication to prevent the army's intelligence from being leaked. It was the same when Kikiga encountered Psionic Prime. Thus, Adamo still did not know how many spaceships the Black Star Corps had and how strong they were. On the contrary, Philip had found out the location of Adamo's main force through the quantum network and was currently recalling the exploration team outside. He then ordered the expedition team to rush toward the enemy's main force. No matter what war it was, the importance of intelligence could not be ignored. The Army's virtual technology was far superior to the enemy's, and the Great Cosmos Corps was like a bunch of blind men in comparison. Ever since he had dominated the universe, Adamo had never met an enemy that could make him feel pressured. However, the appearance of the Black Star Corps this time shook his confidence. This might be the strongest opponent he had ever met. "The Black Star Corps is not bad," Adamo said with a solemn tone. "I'm willing to call you the strongest. However, your outcome won't change at all after encountering my fleet." Adamo's eyes were cold and filled with confidence. This time, he had brought all his forces, a total of 100,000 battleships. This was the fleet that he had accumulated for many years, the foundation for his domination of the universe. In his mind, such a large fleet was more than enough to sweep through all enemies. Chapter 824. In the center of the Geru star cluster, after encountering the scout team, the expedition team gathered all their troops, adjusted their direction, and jumped toward the location of Adamo's fleet. At the same time, Adamo's fleet was also heading toward the direction where the scout team had disappeared. The two teams were closing in on each other, and the distance between them kept decreasing. After 2 days of hyperdrive, the two teams finally met in an area of the universe. We finally found the enemy. In the tens of thousands of spaceships of the expedition team, the players looked at the densely packed metal battleships outside the porthole, and they could not help but feel energized. The players formed their own teams one after another. China's 4 big guilds and the first-rate guilds were no exception. The members of the clubs formed their own teams, while the core members of the guilds and the peripheral members sat in their spaceships to protect their own team members. This was not to protect them, but to help their own team snatch the boss. Annihilation of the Great Cosmos Core was a faction series mission, and there were many side missions. Most of them were team missions, and the ones with the highest rewards required the killing of the enemy's combatants, leaders, and even the number of these people was limited. This was especially so for Great Emperor Adamo. There was only one kill, and while it was not a solo mission, only one team could share the mission reward. Every club wanted to help their own team obtain the highest reward. The players of Dynasty, Temple of God, Long Sky, and Fried Eggplants were all in their own teams, and the 3 pillars of Long Sky were discussing their strategy. Sleepy Winter stroked his chin and said, "According to the reward level, the enemy's leader, Adamo, should have grade 8 combat strength. We can only kill him with numbers." Twinkle Fried Rice said, "If that's the case, the team that attacks him first will be in the most danger. If we want to snatch the kill, it's best for us to slack while dealing damage and let the others pull the aggro. Only the team with the highest damage output will be considered the kill. If we're killed by the boss, it'll take too much time to revive and run back. We can only deal damage if we're alive." Hao Tian nodded. "That's right." On the other spaceship, Mad Blade also formed a team with his own team. He even pulled Maple Moon along, and the two of them had a good relationship. Mad Blade tilted his head and looked out the side window. Beside him were rows of battleships in formation. The guilds were clearly gathered together, clearly different from the normal players. Seeing this, Mad Blade shook his head helplessly. "With so many guilds trying to snatch the boss, I think our chances are slim." Rivervale's vice-captain, Evil Sword, had high morale. "As long as we don't die, we might not lose in terms of damage output. This kind of unique boss won't just stand there and wait for us to attack. Whoever deals more damage will be the biggest threat and will be attacked by the boss first. We might be able to survive until the end." The players were all experienced and knew that the bosses in Galaxy were very difficult to deal with. For normal people, battles were ever-changing, and they would rarely be aggroed by one person. Instead, they would attack whoever was more useful in the battle first. They would prioritize eliminating the most troublesome opponent. The battle style was very realistic. Therefore, when players fought bosses, it was very easy for the aggro to be messed up, and they had to improvise. Maple Moon smiled at the side and did not say anything. She looked around at the army and was secretly excited. Such a huge scene could be said to have been created by her, and she had single-handedly triggered the Faction Crusade mission. She was filled with a sense of accomplishment and joy, because she was the one who triggered the Faction Crusade mission. Compared to the other players, she had an independent mission. When a Great Cosmos Core was destroyed, she would receive additional rewards that the other players did not have. She would receive a large amount of experience and exploration points, 300 Red Empire contribution points, and 1,000 Black Star Corps contribution points. This was probably the reward for handing over the mission item to the country. This reward was extremely generous, and Maple Moon calculated that she might even become the highest level player in the game. Meanwhile, in the Russian and Australian troops, Vodka and Captain Old Henry led their guild members to prepare for battle. They also wanted to snatch the boss, although the players from their respective clubs did not come along. If they could prevent the Chinese players from snatching the boss reward, it would be equivalent to helping their own players. Although the Russians and Australians had suffered some losses on planet Pangurus, they still had their responsibilities and did not wish for the Chinese players to be so arrogant in front of them. At the same time, Adamo, who was facing off against the expedition team, was also observing the Black Star Corps. The other party only has slightly more than 10,000 battleships, and we have the absolute advantage in numbers, the adjutant said. Adamo nodded. He had over 100,000 battleships, which was almost 10 times that of the enemy. The difference between the two parties was too huge. However, the Black Star Corps actually had 10,000 battleships, which was definitely not a small number. Adamo was shocked by this. In his impression, every battleship required a huge amount of resources to build, and the time required to build it was extremely long. The strongest race that he had met before only had a few hundred battleships. He originally thought that the quantum technology was the only advantage of the Black Star Corps, but he did not expect that the Black Star Corps' fleet was not weak either. No wonder they sealed off the information and did not want to let me know that they had such a large fleet. They probably wanted to catch me off guard. Adamo thought to himself as he broke out in cold sweat. In order to gather over 10,000 battleships, the enemy had definitely mobilized all of their forces. Luckily, he had brought all of his troops with him. If he had only sent a small team like usual, he would have been in deep trouble. Indeed, it was the right decision to go out personally. Adamo's eyes flashed, and he slowly said, "Send a message to the other party. I want to talk to their leader." In his eyes, this was a battle where both sides had mobilized all of their forces. The army commander of the Black Star Corps had always been mysterious and had never appeared before. Adamo wanted to see what kind of person the army commander of the Black Star Corps was. To actually have over 10,000 battleships, he felt that this fellow had the right to talk to him. After a while, the adjutant said with a trembling voice, "The other party refused to talk to us. They said, what did they say?" Adamo narrowed his eyes. "They said that you don't have the right to talk to their army commander." Adamo laughed with a hoarse voice. He was not angry at all, and there was even a hint of mockery in his laughter. "I don't have the right? Who else is more qualified than me? Forget it, people are going to die anyway, so there's nothing to be calculative about." Adamo shook his head and lost interest in talking. He waved his hands and slowly said, "Attack and annihilate them." After the order was given, the 100,000 spaceships opened fire at the same time. Countless cannonballs were shot into the expedition team's formation like a storm, causing countless explosions. Adamo originally thought that he would see the enemy suffer heavy losses, but what happened next caused his eyes to freeze. When the flames dissipated, not a single one of the 10,000 battleships of the expedition team was destroyed. Although they were few in number, they wanted to surround the enemy fleet that was 10 times their size. The next moment, the 10,000 spaceships accelerated, and due to their speed being much faster than the spaceships of the super-large Cosmos Corps, Adamo's troops did not have much time to react before the 10,000 spaceships charged into their formation. This was the battle method that the players favored the most, and they were not willing to use the annihilation weapons of the spaceships to end the battle quickly because there was no experience to be gained. The players charged into the enemy's spaceships through the charge cabins and slaughtered all the members of the enemy's spaceships. The concentrated fire of the enemy's spaceships could not break through the shields of the army spaceships, and the players were not worried about being surrounded at all. There was only one thought left in their minds: dance with my peerless chaos. The majority of the players had never experienced such an exhilarating experience before. With the superiority of the faction's technology, this battle was like a grass-cutting game. The 10,000 spaceships charged through the great Cosmos Corps' fleet and charged toward the center of Adamo's fleet. No one could stop them, and the enemy's formation was instantly torn apart. Charging felt good for a moment, but charging continuously felt good. In the flagship of the fleet, Adamo stood up and tore off his mask. His expression changed drastically, and disbelief filled his face. Their weapons were completely useless against the enemy. In just a short while, close to 20,000 battleships had been captured by the enemy, and not a single enemy spaceship had been destroyed. This is impossible. How can there be such a huge difference in technology? How can they all be supers? Adamo was no longer as calm as before. He suddenly realized that he had hit an iron wall this time. The enemy was a civilization that was even more advanced than him, a civilization that could completely crush him. He had been rampaging in this universe for far too long, and he had not met an opponent that could threaten him for a long time. He had long forgotten what respect and fear were. Now, the scenes of his fleet collapsing had once again awakened the taste of fear in his heart. His hands that had once killed countless living beings could not help but tremble. He saw the future of his entire fleet being wiped out. Adamo suddenly remembered something from a long time ago. Back then, the Great Cosmos Core was just an ordinary wandering civilization with only a few spaceships. They were still very weak, carefully exploring the universe, overcoming difficulties time after time, and gradually becoming stronger. However, he did not know when it started, but he had actually lost this caution that he relied on to survive. If he had not been so reckless and planned properly before the battle, if he had not been so arrogant and cautiously sent people to investigate, if he had not been so easily angered and affected by the provocation of the Black Star Core, perhaps the current outcome would not have occurred. However, he did not know that this was just his own wishful thinking. In front of overwhelming strength and intelligence, no matter how much he tried to act, the objective outcome would not have changed. Now, no matter how much Adamo regretted, it was useless. The excited players wantonly slaughtered and destroyed Adamo's fleet. The casualties quickly exceeded 1/3. The army was defeated like a landslide. The overwhelming combat power caused the remaining enemy ships to lose their courage. No one wanted to stay behind and be slaughtered. They all began to flee. The huge fleet fell apart and fled in all directions. Retreat! Retreat! Adamo came back to his senses and hurriedly roared out the order. Very quickly, the main ship and the surrounding frigates turned around and joined the fleeing army. The Great Cosmos Core had arrived aggressively and fled in panic. It had only taken them less than 20 minutes to do so. The spaceships of the various large guilds abandoned the fleeing enemy spaceships and went straight for the main ship. Everyone wanted to snatch the head of this boss. As for the enemy spaceships that were fleeing in other directions, they were chased down by many ordinary players who had not completed the requirements of the other branches and were quickly nibbled away. Philip had already locked onto the position of every single battleship through the quantum link. Even if the enemies could escape now, there would still be players chasing after them. When the battle started, Philip had hacked into the database of the main ship and copied all the information of the Great Cosmos Core, including the information of the various planets that they had plundered over the years. The dynasty had already obtained the information that they needed, and all that was left was to eliminate the source of the problem. Philip would only provide support and leave the rest to the players. Very quickly, the fleeing fleet that Adamo was in was left alone. He only had a few hundred frigates around him, and he could only flee pathetically. Philip controlled the spaceship of Adamo and the others remotely and forced them to land on a desolate planet. The pursuing players descended and surrounded Adamo. At the center of a fresh crater, the main ship that was the size of a mountain range was stabbed into the ground with black smoke billowing out. Countless parts and the wreckage of the other frigates were scattered around. This ship was Adamo's flagship, and when Philip forced him to land, he had very considerately turned off the engine of the enemy's ship to save them energy. Ka. Figures walked out from the wreckage of the battleship, one after another. The armor on their bodies had helped them resist the impact, but it was almost completely destroyed. However, the fall from such a high altitude still killed most of the ordinary members, and less than 10% of them survived. The wreckage of the battleship was on fire, and black smoke billowed out. Adamo held his head as he walked out. Even with his strength, he was still dizzy from the fall, and every bone in his body was aching. Looking at the heavy casualties around him, Adamo could not help but look around with a blank expression. Right at this moment, a huge gust of wind blew, and army battleships descended along the edge of the crater, surrounding Adamo and everyone else. Adamo raised his head and looked around. Countless figures appeared on the towering cliffs around him. They were all players chasing after him, and countless lustful gazes locked onto him. There were more than 300,000 players in the first wave, including the players from the various large guilds. I can't escape. Adamo was a prideful person, and facing such a situation, he could not help but feel grief and anger. You want to kill me? Come on then. The next moment, Adamo suddenly roared, and the dozen or so mechanical tentacles behind him opened up like a peacock spreading its tail. Yellow laser beams shot out in all directions at astonishing speed. This was the weapon that he always carried around with him, and it was used to help him control his Esper ability. His Esper ability allowed him to shoot energy lasers through his body, and the form of the attack would change according to the area of the laser beam. For example, if he shot from his palm, it would turn into an energy shockwave, and if he used his fingers, toes, tentacles, and other parts of his body, he would be able to shoot accurate beams. In close combat, his fists and legs could also be imbued with energy attacks. If he released energy from his entire body, it would turn into a shield. This was a very practical Esper ability. Adamo was the strongest individual in the Great Cosmos Core, and his Calamity-grade Esper ability allowed his lasers to be far more powerful than ordinary energy weapons. He could be said to be a superhumanoid cannon. His arrogance stemmed from his confidence in his own strength. Among the natives of the Flickering World, there were very few who had reached the Calamity grade, and he had never met an opponent who could wipe out an entire planet all by himself. While he was surrounded, Adamo did not lose all hope. He was very confident in his own strength. While these enemies were all supers, none of them seemed to be his match. If he could kill all these pursuers, he might still have a chance of survival. With that thought in mind, Adamo regained his morale, and he began to attack crazily. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As the lasers shot out, the players hurriedly dodged. These lasers struck the ground, creating huge craters with a diameter of dozens of meters. If a level 100 or above player was hit, while they would not be killed instantly, they would be left with only a sliver of health. He was indeed a Calamity-grade super. The hearts of the players tightened. This was the first time they had ganged up on a Calamity-grade super without the help of an NPC. Everyone was a little uncertain. They had seen quite a number of elite Calamity-grade supers in the Secret War, and almost all of them could kill them instantly. No one knew if they could kill a proper Calamity-grade supers with their current level. It's time to fight the boss. Without much hesitation, more than 300,000 players jumped down from the mountain walls in all directions and began to charge. Whether they could win or not, they would know after charging forward. Since they were not going to die, they might as well charge forward. Chapter 825. At the same time that the Adamo fleet was destroyed, Han Xiao, who was slacking at the border of the Geru star cluster, received the intelligence sent back by Philip. The information about the planets that the Great Cosmos Core had accumulated was also sent back. Let me see how much I've gained. Han Xiao opened the information and browsed through it. Although the Great Cosmos Core was just a castle in the sky, they had discovered quite a number of planets over the years, scattered across a few star systems in the middle of the Geru star cluster. Some of the planets originally had native civilizations, but they were all enslaved by the Great Cosmos Core. Their internal information was not like the information that the Red Empire had in his previous life. This information recorded the process of the Great Cosmos Core's plundering in detail, including video footage, which was filled with bloodshed. Shaking his head, Han Xiao contacted Chief Commander Terakov. I've obtained the information about the Great Cosmos Core. I've sent you a copy. Good job. Terakov was overjoyed. He quickly browsed through it and smiled. The dynasty will remember your contribution. Before Han Xiao could say anything, a notification appeared on the interface. You have submitted Great Cosmos Core exploration information, plus 1,500 Red Empire contribution points, plus 550 personal exploration points. Flickering World. First round, evaluation increased by 1 grade. The Flickering World main storyline mission was a faction mission, and exploring Geru was the first round. All the players shared the mission evaluation, and the mission evaluation depended on everyone's total exploration points. This was a special exploration achievement. After more than a month of exploration, Everyone's mission evaluation was originally D-, but now, everyone's evaluation had been raised to D. It did not seem like much, but this was a grade S+ main storyline mission. Every small increase in evaluation would take a long time, and it would only get more difficult toward the end. However, the 1,500 Red Empire contribution points was the reward that made Han Xiao excited. He had spent 6,000 contribution points to exchange for the ultimate knowledge, mechanical life Tinder, and he still had 2,000 plus contribution points left. Now that he had obtained 1,500 contribution points in one go, he only needed to obtain another 2,000 contribution points to exchange for a new ultimate knowledge. Due to his status, the cost of exchanging for ultimate knowledge was discounted by half. In his previous life, an ordinary player would have needed 12,000 contribution points to exchange for a new ultimate knowledge. However, when normal players joined the Red Empire, they would be able to obtain military ranks. As they continued to do missions to increase their ranks, they would be able to enjoy more and more discounts. However, even if they were promoted to the highest rank, they would not be able to reach the 50% discount that he had. The hidden mission brought by Maple Moon made him a little fatter. Han Xiaoxin was very happy. Not only did such a capable player need to be rewarded, he also needed to be rewarded handsomely. It was a good opportunity to motivate other players to explore the hidden quest. No one would be rich without a windfall. That was why it was said that being a jungler was still very lucrative. While he was looking at the interface, Terakov did not stop and said, "This intelligence can save us a lot of manpower. I will get someone to record this information into the star map. Since you have already sent people to destroy the Great Cosmos Core, you will temporarily take over their territory. Since you have chosen to spread out, leave a team to develop in the center of the Geru star cluster." Sure, Han Xiao smiled. This was the reason why he had come along. Compared to the planets at the edge of the star cluster, the center of the star cluster would be the most prosperous region in the future. In order to destroy the Great Cosmos Core, the expedition team had officially established a long-distance channel. When the time came, he would be able to directly head to the center of the star cluster and occupy all the most famous planets in his previous life. If he occupied the territory first, the other dynasty allies would not be able to snatch it from him and would have to take a detour. As long as he occupied the most prosperous regions in the star cluster, he would be able to earn the most. Furthermore, with the first long-distance channel as a foundation, he would not attract any suspicion when he went to the east of the star cluster to steal universal treasures in the future. Terakov then said that he would report this to the dynasty and ask them to reward the Black Star Core with additional resources. The two of them chatted for a while before hanging up. Han Xiao then connected to Philip's vision. Only then did he have the time to look at the battlefield many star systems away to see how the players were fighting with Adamo. Boom! Boom! Explosions occurred one after another. Wave after wave of people surged forward and charged towards Adamo along the walls of the ring-shaped mountain like a tidal wave. Adamo fought alone and weaved through the crowd to avoid the attacks. Countless energy beams shot out from various parts of his body like a mobile cannon, shooting toward the crowd in all directions. Beams of light swept across the crowded battlefield, striking different locations and causing violent explosions, sending the shielded figures flying. The battle had already lasted for quite some time, and countless players were using their abilities. All sorts of lights flashed on the battlefield, and all sorts of abilities appeared one after another. The number of debuffs on Adamo had never dropped below 30. Although the duration was short, there were too many players, and the debuffs were constantly refreshed. The difference in level was too great, and Adamo had the advantage in speed. He constantly changed his position, and the players were unable to lock onto him or hold his aggro. It was as though the players in different regions were randomly attacked by Adamo. As long as they encountered him, the players who had just reached grade B would not be able to tank his damage. Normally, the players would fight a dungeon boss in a dungeon with a few dozen people. This was the first time that hundreds of thousands of players were fighting against a real character of such a high level. Every single team wanted to do as much damage as possible, and they did not care about friendly fire. The difficulty of this battle was much higher than what the players had expected. All the strategies that they had thought of before the battle were basically useless, and they could only improvise. However, what the players did not know was that the pressure that Adamo was facing was countless times greater than theirs. He shuttled through the crowd. Originally, he wanted to use the crowd as a meat shield to make this group of enemies hesitate and worry about accidentally injuring them. But he was shocked to find that this group of people did not care about the life or death of their comrades. They were willing to blow up their comrades to attack him. Even Adamo, who had a cold personality, was shocked by the players. He clearly had no way to escape, and the enemy had the upper hand, but they still chose to attack without any regard for their own lives. This is too cold-blooded. The Black Star Corps is actually so unscrupulous. The players were not afraid of death, and his strategy was completely useless. Adamo could only endure a sea of attacks at every moment, and he had no choice but to expend energy to maintain his shield. The attacks of the players were only a grade B, but he did not dare take so much damage with his body. After all, he did not have a strong physique. His shield was not able to block out all the damage, especially the psychic attacks. Most of the negative statuses that he had received were from the psychics. Adamo also had quite a few light injuries on his body, and his health was slowly decreasing. He did not have a high recovery ability, and even if he used his energy to stimulate his cells, his regeneration speed would not be able to keep up with his health. Furthermore, with his energy being depleted so quickly, he felt that his chances of killing all the enemies were getting slimmer and slimmer. Although that was what he thought in his heart, as long as there was even the slightest chance of survival, Adamo did not want to wait for death. Even if I can't escape, I have to deal a huge amount of damage to your supers. Adamo swore in his heart. Even if he was going to die, he had to bite off a piece of meat from the Black Star Corps. Since they were fighting so crazily, he would be able to deal as much damage as possible to them. Adamo's figure flashed and moved to another area. Suddenly, a series of mechanical traps appeared under his feet, and a strong magnetic field grabbed onto his body, creating an extremely strong restraining force that slowed down his movements. "Come over, I've caught him." One of the players was overjoyed. 2-2-2-2. The turrets, surrounded by the mechanical force of different players, all turned around and fired at Adamo. A dense rain of bullets was fired at him. Adamo let out a low roar, and the energy shield solidified once again. The rain of bullets hit the shield, creating sparks and sparks. Rumble. Energy shot out from his tentacles and fingers like a peacock spreading its tail, instantly destroying the turrets that were attacking him. Following which, he stomped his feet and released an energy shockwave, shattering the mechanical traps that were grabbing onto him and regaining his freedom. Just as Adamo was about to retreat, he suddenly felt dizzy. More than 10 psychics rushed over and threw mental shockwaves at him. During that short moment of delay, a large group of pugilists charged forward, and their fists smashed onto the shield like cannonballs. Bang, bang, bang. The shield started to flicker, and Adamo gritted his teeth. Many of his tentacles swept out like whips, and along with the trajectory of the attack, a powerful shockwave blasted away the pugilists who were entangling him, smashing into a large group of people. Fighting on the ground was very disadvantageous for him, and Adamo tried to fly again. However, he felt an immense pressure when he was only 10 meters above the ground, and his movements became extremely slow. Looking up, there were countless magic arrays floating in the sky, stacked with countless anti-gravity spells. Even if the spells of a Grey Bee mage were stacked together, they would not be able to trap a Calamity-grade super. However, it would take Adamo a lot of time to pass through the anti-gravity zone, and he did not dare do so, as he would easily become a target. Furthermore, even if he could fly, if he did not kill all these pursuers, they would still chase after him with their spaceships. He did not feel that his flying speed was faster than a spaceship, so where could he escape to on this planet? Both parties fought a bloody battle, and after who knew how long, Adamo was completely exhausted. He could not remember how many enemies he had killed, probably in the tens of thousands. Furthermore, the enemies had probably injured many times more people than he had killed. A bunch of lunatics. Adamo spat out a mouthful of blood and dragged his heavy body to continue fighting. His energy was almost depleted, and the injuries all over his body were getting worse and worse. Looks like I don't have a chance. Adamo's heart sank, and he became even more ferocious. At the very least, the enemies had suffered heavy casualties. Even if he died, he would drag a bunch of people down with him. However, right at this moment, Adamo dodged another round of attacks. Looking at the densely packed crowd around him, he suddenly realized something that he had neglected while immersed in the battle. After fighting for so long, he should have killed a lot of enemies. The enemies clearly did not send any reinforcements, so why did the number of enemies not seem to have changed? Adamo was stunned. In his worldview, if a person died, they would definitely die. He did not have the concept of resurrection, so he did not pay attention to the situation. However, the battlefield was so chaotic, and there were more than 300,000 enemies. He did not have the time to distinguish who he was facing at all. Furthermore, he was in a very dangerous situation, so he could not divert his attention and only noticed this strange situation now. After noticing this situation, Adamo carefully observed for a while, and his expression suddenly changed. These people are actually undying? Adamo's eyes widened in disbelief. A deep sense of despair passed through his body like a bolt of lightning, and a deep sense of helplessness appeared in his heart. No wonder they did not care about the casualties. It turned out that these people did not have the concept of casualties at all. He thought that he had caused a lot of damage to the enemies, but it turned out that it was just his own wishful thinking. His resistance was just a futile struggle. If it was just that there were too many enemies, Adamo would still have the desire to fight to the death. However, when he realized that the enemies could actually resurrect, Adamo's mentality collapsed, and his will to fight disappeared. Adamo no longer had any hope of surviving. He roared toward the sky and unleashed all of the remaining energy in his body without holding back. Rumble. Over a dozen thick pillars of light swept across the battlefield, instantly killing anyone who came into contact with them. In the blink of an eye, the pillars of light cleared out a large area of the battlefield. Just this one attack had killed over 10,000 players. Attention, all of you get down. This should be the final stage of the boss, and it's about to enter the killing zone. The players hurriedly turned into Voldemort, and the pillars of light swept past their heads. Just the shockwaves from the pillars of light were enough to deal a certain amount of damage to them. The more than 10 pillars of light quickly dissipated, and Adamo finally squeezed himself dry. He wobbled as if he would fall to the ground at any moment. Bang! The next moment, an artillery shell blasted Adamo to the ground. When the players saw that, they hurriedly got up and swarmed toward Adamo, fighting for an advantageous position and attacking Adamo. Adamo, who had lost all ability to fight back, was like a doll being fought over by a group of people. His limbs were quickly torn off, and he allowed the players to torture his body. His eyes became more and more lifeless, and the faces of the players around him were like that of a demon in his eyes. When Adamo was on the verge of death, he suddenly hallucinated. The faces of the players around him changed, and it was as if they had all turned into his face. He was in a daze, and his plundering life for so many years appeared in his mind. Could this be retribution? Poochie. The next moment, his vision spun, and his head was pulled off by someone. The life in Adamo's eyes quickly disappeared, and only a grayish-white color was left. He had lost all signs of life. Ha ha! The reward for killing him is ours. The players from Dynasty cheered. Second Prince was overjoyed. In his excitement, he kicked Adamo's head away like a ball, and King Admiral shook his head helplessly. Fisk, it's actually Dynasty. I died 3 times, and I didn't even get to touch anything. What a loss. Why don't we get rid of them here? The pro players from the other guilds glared at Dynasty. Vodka and Captain Old Henry were a little disappointed. The reward for killing the boss had actually been taken away by the previous champion club. It would have been fine even if it was given to some other small club. Dynasty would probably be a strong opponent in this season's Pro League. During the chaotic battle earlier, they had aimed their attacks at the Chinese teams, wanting to pretend that they had accidentally injured their teammates. However, they realized that they had also suffered a lot of accidental injuries, dying about 3 times on average. They guessed that they had also been targeted by the Chinese guilds. Although the ordinary players did not receive the reward, they were still very excited. Adamo was the first true Calamity grade boss to die by their hands. This was the first time the players had killed a Calamity grade super. On the other side, Han Xiao also received Philip's report and heaved a sigh of relief. "We've finally killed a Calamity grade super." If it was a Calamity grade super like Ashes, the players would not be able to kill him even if they used up all their revivals. However, Adamo did not have such a perverted ability. He was only an ordinary Calamity grade super. Philip had caused his spaceship to crash, and the players had spaceships to chase after him. Thus, he had no way to escape, and could only face the players head-on. Furthermore, the players already had grade B combat strength, so Adamo could only die in the end. In Han Zhao's eyes, this matter was a milestone for the players, and it was also a turning point for the players. In his previous life, the players had only killed their first Calamity grade super in version 4.0. After that, the players all knew that they had the strength to threaten ordinary Calamity grades. Their mentality changed, and they became more confident, as well as more suicidal. This was something that could not be avoided. The players were too subjective, and they would have such thoughts sooner or later. However, the effect on Han Xiao was very limited at the moment. His strength and influence were enough to suppress the little demons in the hearts of most players. He had purposely gotten the players to deal with Adamo, so that they could kill a Calamity grade super as members of the Black Star Corps. If not for Philip's help, they would not have been able to stop Adamo from escaping, and they would not have been able to kill the first Calamity grade super. Thus, this first kill was the result of both the players and the faction. As long as the players understood this point, it would increase their sense of belonging to the faction. Furthermore, this first kill was a milestone and the first collective action of the army. Through the collective memory of this achievement, it might strengthen the bond that many people had with the army. Chapter 826. After killing Adamo, the Destroy the Great Cosmos Core mission did not end immediately. There were still other players chasing after the fish that escaped to other places. After the battle ended, the hundreds of thousands of players on the battlefield checked their interfaces, and quite a few of them saw a notification that only popped up during the battle. Black Star Core submitted Great Cosmos Core exploration information. Flickering World. First round, rating increased by 1 small grade. The Flickering World main storyline mission had a similar rating, and not only did Han Xiao receive this notification, the other players also received it and were overjoyed. The army was helping them expand the rewards of the battle. The players present were overjoyed. After this mission ended, the exploration points accumulated by all the players would probably be able to raise the rating of the first round of the main storyline mission from D to C. Other than the players, there were no other living beings on the battlefield. The players scattered across the battlefield and entered the wreckage of the enemy battleships to search for loot. Although the technological level of the Great Cosmos Core was far inferior to the Black Star Core, the players never left empty-handed and swept through everything of value like locusts. After looting the corpses for a while, the hundreds of thousands of players left in their spaceships. This crater was filled with burn marks, and there were huge craters everywhere. Wreckage of battleships was stabbed into the ground, and black smoke billowed. Spaceships carrying players rose into the sky and left the planet. They waved their hands and left the planet, leaving behind only the ruins of the battle and the corpses that no one cared about. On the forums, many of the players who had participated in killing Adamo started to boast about the first blood. As the first Calamity grade super that they had killed, Adamo was extremely memorable, and someone immediately recorded this event in the Shattered Star Rings Chronicles. In Galaxy Calendar Year 705, Adamo's first blood was completed. Of course, there were some who were proud. It had already been 3 versions, and everyone had seen a calamity grade for the first time in version 2.0. During the Secret War in version 3.0, they had personally participated in a battlefield with a calamity grade. The strength of a calamity grade was deeply ingrained in their hearts, and they had finally killed one. Although they were surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people, and the other party was a native, and they had relied on the army to prevent the other party from escaping, the players were still very excited. Someone had analyzed a long time ago that as long as the combat power system did not change, as the upper limit of the level would continue to increase, their importance in the galaxy would also increase. This first clear was the new evidence for this theory. Many players couldn't help but look forward to the future versions. Maybe one day, we can punch Heber and kick Cisco. It was a pity that Han Xiao did not know about the ambitions of these players. Otherwise, he would have let them continue to sleep and dream about everything. Dynasty was the one who took the kill reward. As one of China's oldest clubs, no one was surprised that they took Adamo's first kill. In reality, no matter which of the 4 great guilds obtained the kill, it would be normal in their eyes. If any other guild, or even an ordinary player obtained the kill, they would be considered lucky. Many players were envious when they saw the kill rewards and mission rewards posted by Dynasty's official platform. The ones who were envious the most were the other guilds. This was the first kill of a Calamity Grade super boss they were talking about. The rewards were secondary. The fame that came from the first kill was what the various large guilds wanted. This was the glory of the guild and could be used to attract members. Even if they defeated a new Calamity Grade boss in the future, it would not be as significant as the first kill. Second Prince was very pleased with himself and posted a screenshot of the moment of the kill. He was the one who dealt the final blow, and he could not help but brag about it on the forums, causing everyone to be envious. Although he was a pro player, he had never paid attention to building his image. As the second in the Dynasty team, he had always wanted to rise above King Admiral and gave people the impression that he was both mischievous and arrogant. However, as Maple Moon revealed her mission under frenzied swords instigation, all of the players' attention was drawn away from Second Prince. The screenshot that Maple Moon posted included her discovery of the beacon and her independent mission as the instigator of this incident. Many players originally thought that the Black Star Corps attacking the Great Cosmos Corps was ordered by the Dynasty. However, after seeing Maple Moon's screenshot, they were shocked to realize that the army's large-scale attack this time was actually a storyline created by a player. This seemed to be the first time that a player had such a huge impact on the army. Oh my god, this was actually a hidden mission triggered by a player. Maple Moon? This name sounds familiar. Aren't they the 4 people who followed the army commander in the earliest version? To be able to discover such a good hidden mission, they are really lucky. Many players were envious of Maple Moon again. In the past 2 versions, Maple Moon had not revealed herself, but she had suddenly become famous. In Han Zhao's previous life, Maple Moon was already famous for discovering hidden storylines, and she gradually became famous in version 3.0, becoming a dark horse in the 3rd Galaxy Pro League. This was not strange at all. There were dark horses every year, and there were especially many in the 3rd Galaxy Pro League. Because version 3.0 was the rise of the mechanic class, 80% of the dark horses were mechanic players who had very embarrassing results in the previous 2 Galaxy Pro Leagues. The reward for a solo mission this time was extremely generous, and it was even more than killing Adamo. This made the spectators on the forums green with envy. She did not even need to kill the boss, and she only needed to slack by the side to obtain more rewards than killing the boss. That was too profitable. Second Prince immediately became listless. He stopped showing off and joined the envious crowd. Compared to the other professional players who were cold and aloof, he was much more active. He liked to mingle with the crowd in various senses of the word. These were not the only screenshots of Maple Moon. There were also the rewards that Black Star had given her through the faction interface. You have triggered the faction mission, Black Star's Generosity. Mission completed. Due to your contribution, your faction, Black Star Corps, has received an exploration achievement. Black Star's favorability toward you has increased by 10 points. You have received 25 million EXP, 200,000 ANAs, and 2,000 Black Star Corps contribution points. Your army rank has increased by 1. You have received a new army title, Merit Explorer. Looking at the rewards given to Maple Moon by the army, countless spectators were drooling. Oh my god, the army's reward was even better. 200,000 ANAs was not a small amount, and there was even an independent army title. The effects of this title were way too tempting. You could receive 500 ANAs every day, 15,000 ANAs a month, and 180,000 ANAs a year. The long-term benefits were very impressive. Furthermore, you could receive money while sitting at home. They had always been the ones spending money in the army. This was the first time they had seen someone receiving money from the army. The meaning of Han Zhao's mission was very clear. Did you see that? This is the treatment of a meritorious person. Secret Explorer and Merit Explorer were both army titles, but Secret Explorer and Merit Explorer were different. The former was given to all the players who participated in the Secret War, while the latter was a unique title that only Maple Moon and Scorpion Daddy had. This also confirmed one of their guesses. As long as the method was right, the players could also indirectly influence the actions of a faction. Many people became excited. Through Maple Moon's screenshot, the players understood how to replicate this incident. The only way was to find hidden missions and hand them over to the army. Now that the army is exploring the flickering world, as long as we can find hidden elements similar to the Great Cosmos Core, we can also get the Merit Explorer title, right? That's definitely the case. The army has such an achievement title to encourage the members to carefully dig for hidden clues. With Maple Moon as an example, countless players were stimulated, and their passion for hidden missions was ignited. They could not wait to immediately explore the planet and dig 3 feet into the ground to find hidden missions. Looking at the red-eyed spectators on the forums, Han Xiaoxin was secretly overjoyed and chuckled. He had given Maple Moon a title alone, which had both glory and benefits. This was to encourage the other players to find hidden missions and hand them over to him. After all, finding hidden missions was the specialty of the players with the interface. Perhaps his second Bold Explorer fragment would fall into the hands of these players. Other than that, he also had the intention of grooming Maple Moon. In his previous life, this lady was one of the representatives of the rise of the mechanic class in version 3.0. As a great teacher of the mechanic class, if the overall results of the mechanic class were better in this pro league, he would be able to attract more new players to choose the mechanic class, and he would have more high-quality leaks to harvest. Maple Moon was a dark horse in this pro league, and Han Xiao did not mind making this dark horse even darker. With so many rewards, Maple Moon would probably be the first player to reach the max level. The players were still chasing after the remnants of the Great Cosmos Core. They would then go and take over the other party's territory according to the information, so there would not be any problems. Han Xiao stopped paying attention and let the players do as they pleased. Looking around, other than the operators, there were only 2 officers in the room, Aurora and Fu Ding. Aurora was sitting in front of the control panel, her head drooping as if she was about to fall asleep. She did not need to manage the autopilot, so she was already dozing off. On the other side, Fu Ding was sitting on the sofa, resting with his eyes closed. It was unknown if he was training his psychic energy or chatting with Chun Xing in his mind. The other Black Star Guards, under the leadership of Hela, spent all day fighting in the combat training room. The exploration had already been going on for more than a month, and after the initial novelty, they no longer paid attention to the exploration progress. Hela could not stand standing beside Han Xiao and slacking with him every day, so she dragged the other Black Star Guard into training mode every day. A motivated career woman is still quite charming. Han Xiao shook his head, entered the quantum network, and contacted Blue Star. The Black Star Corps' quantum network base station in the Dawnstar cluster had already been built, and he could already contact the people in the Shattered Star Ring through the Army's internal communication channel. He did not need to go through the Red Empire as an intermediary. Floating Dragon had already settled down in Blue Star for more than a month, so he contacted Blue Star mainly to ask about the situation on Floating Dragon Island. It didn't take long for Bennett to come online. After not contacting him for a while, Bennett's voice sounded high-spirited and full of motivation. Bennett reported the situation. In the past month, Floating Dragon had started to expand, and a large number of people of financial groups had come. Blue Star was affected by this and welcomed a new development opportunity. With the current speed of Blue Star's development, Bennett felt that he could bring forward the alien colonization plan that he had only planned to propose a few decades later. For a surface civilization, this was not easy, but with the help of so many galactic organizations, colonizing an alien planet was much easier than slowly climbing the technology tree. With the protection of Floating Dragon, the safety of the alien colonization was guaranteed. Bennett planned to use 5 years to digest the benefits that Floating Dragon Island had brought him before officially starting Blue Star's alien colonization plan. He called it the 5-year plan. Han Xiao could not help but tremble when he heard it. After reporting the development of Blue Star, Bennett brought up another matter. About the Star Pupil Protoss militants who tried to attack Blue Star more than a month ago, I have already prepared the materials and evidence. I plan to bring it up in the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference and condemn the Star Pupil Protoss. Not bad. Since you have this identity, you should make good use of it. Han Xiao nodded. Cisco's people had done something wrong, so there was nothing wrong with letting him take the blame. I will attend the conference through remote projection. Black Star, is it convenient for you to attend the conference through remote projection as well? Bennett wanted to find someone to hold the fort. After all, Cisco was a beyond grade A, and he felt that he was not qualified. Since Black Star was the representative of Blue Star, it was normal for them to attend the conference together. Me? Haha, of course it's convenient for me. I've been very free recently. Han Xiao chuckled. Attending the conference personally was not a bad idea. He could see Cisco's pained expression. He did not seem to have such an organ. Chapter 827. The Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference was a civilization alliance led by the 7-star cluster civilizations in the Shattered Star Ring. It was set up to facilitate the management of the star field. The 3 universal civilizations usually would not interfere with the daily affairs of the other star fields. Most of the time, the star cluster or supercluster civilizations in the star field were the executive directors. The executive directors of the Shattered Star Ring were the 7-star cluster civilizations, and they were in charge of mediating the conflicts between the members of the various star system civilizations. Although the goal was for everyone to resolve their conflicts, most of the time, the Civilization Conference was just a large-scale quarrel. They could fight over any trivial matter, and there were not many times when they could actually resolve problems. In the Secret War not long ago, even Purple Crystal and Clint, who were the referees, had personally gone down to tear each other's faces. The Civilization Conference in the Shattered Star Ring was obvious. After all, the Shattered Star Ring was one of the chaotic borders of the explored universe, and the way they did things was much more brutal than the other star fields. A long time ago, the various civilizations would send their ambassadors to attend the conference personally. There was one time when the 7-star cluster civilizations could not stand the brawls and decided to participate in the conference through remote projections. Everyone was just a projection, and no one could hit anyone. If they had the ability, they could come and hit them through the network cable. Such examples did exist. In any case, the Civilization Conference would be held regularly to resolve the backlog of events. The most recent conference would be held a few days later, and this would be the first time the Blue Star civilization had participated in it. Normally, only civilizations that had reached the star system level would be able to enter the conference. However, Han Xiao had made a deal with the various star cluster civilizations and allowed the Blue Star civilization to enter the conference. They were the only surface civilization in the Shattered Star Ring to participate in the conference, and the representative was Han Xiao himself. A few days later, the conference was held as scheduled. Han Xiao received a notification from the Amethyst civilization and connected to the conference hall through the internal channel. He logged into his remote projection account. Buzz, buzz. A buzzing sound could be heard, and a light flashed before Han Xiao's eyes. The next moment, he shared the vision of the conference hall with the remote projection. In front of him was a ring-shaped venue, a little like the structure of a coliseum. The black tables and chairs on each floor were seamlessly connected rings. The center was the lowest and gradually rose from the inside to the outside. The rings were stacked layer by layer, forming a staircase. There was no blind spot at any seat, and everything could be seen at a glance. The dome of the venue was surrounded by a starry sky, which should be an indoor simulation. The scene was a thumbnail of the Shattered Star Ring, which looked rather grand. Han Xiao lowered his head and found that his remote projection was already sitting in his seat. Beside him was Bennett's projection. On the table in front of them was the metal nameplate of Blue Star. The two of them were seated at a higher level. Looking around the venue, the remote projections of the various representatives of the various civilizations were coming online one after another, appearing in the empty seats. The seats of the representatives of the different civilizations were some distance apart, not sitting close to each other. This is the venue of the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference. Bennett was amazed. He then turned to look at Han Xiao, nodded, and greeted him. Black Star, you're finally online. It hasn't started yet. I'm early. Han Xiao looked down and glanced at the center of the venue. The projections of the representatives of the 7-star cluster civilizations were already online, waiting for all the members to arrive. Han Xiao retracted his gaze, turned around, and asked, How long have you been here? I'm one of the earliest people to arrive. Bennett's tone was filled with emotion. This is my first time attending a conference of this level, so I'm a little nervous. Of course, he would not be nervous because of such a big occasion. Instead, he felt heavy-hearted when he thought about the responsibility of the Blue Star civilization. This is also my first time personally attending a civilization conference. Han Xiao smiled. All the famous civilizations of the Starfield were gathered in one place. Such a scene with extremely high participation requirements was something that most players in his previous life had never experienced, and he was no exception. Black Star, thank you. Bennett's tone suddenly became solemn. If not for you, Blue Star would have to spend hundreds or even thousands of years to sit in this position. You're welcome. We're just taking what we need. Han Xiao was not pretentious and made it clear that he was doing this for his own benefit. He subconsciously wanted to pat Bennett's shoulder, but his hand passed through the other party's body. For a moment, he almost forgot that the two of them were projections. Bennett nodded and did not say anything. He would not be less grateful to Han Xiao because of what he said. He had a rich experience and had long understood that a person's motive was not important. What was important was what they actually did. While the two of them were chatting, many representatives of the other civilizations also noticed Han Xiao and looked at him with complicated emotions. In the venue, the Blue Star civilization was an out-and-out anomaly. Han Xiao had a cooperative relationship with many of the civilizations present, and all the civilizations present knew that Han Xiao had helped Blue Star join the association. They could not help but envy Blue Star's unique advantage. They had a beyond grade A-like Black Star as their guardian, and now they had become the headquarters of Floating Dragon. Why was this lousy planet so lucky? Was it really a place blessed by heroes? Jealousy was jealousy, but since they were able to sit here, it meant that they had the ability. The representatives of the civilizations present would not look down on Blue Star. Who asked them to have a beyond grade A? When a person reached the top, even his chickens and dogs would follow suit. They had no choice but to accept it. Not long after, everyone finally arrived. The chatter gradually became softer and softer until it disappeared. The entire venue was silent. At this moment, a Star Cluster director stood up and slowly spoke. His voice was spread throughout the venue through the nano-sized sound amplification device. I'm very happy to see all my familiar friends again. Compared to the previous meeting, the number of people this time has not decreased. It seems like the security of the Shattered Star Ring has improved. Everyone had a cold expression and cursed in their hearts. There were too many things to complain about. This joke was not funny at all. Perhaps everyone has noticed that we have a new member. This director looked in the direction of Han Xiao and the others and gave a simple introduction. Blue Star Civilization, Aquamarine Federation, Civilization Representative. Your Excellency Black Star. Everyone's gazes were cast over, and they all nodded in greeting. Han Xiao waved his hands and looked around. His gaze landed on Cisco, who was sitting in the Star Pupil God Race seat. He smiled in his heart and raised his hand to greet him. Psyker's face was expressionless. He didn't move at all, as if he hadn't seen anything. Your Excellency Black Star is an acquaintance of everyone, so I won't introduce you further. The director paused and said, since everyone is here, according to the rules, the meeting shall begin. The first topic. Next, the representatives of the various civilizations took turns to perform, raising proposals that they had prepared long ago. Most of them were about trade conflicts, border conflicts, planet ownership, diplomatic condemnation, and so on. The representatives of the civilizations present were all experts at talking. They argued for half a day for every topic, and in the end, most of them could only temporarily shelve the dispute. The process was long and tedious, but Bennett sat up straight and observed every segment seriously, learning from his experience. Han Xiao was already in a daze, thinking about the true meaning of the universe and what to eat for dinner. After half a day, the people in front of them had finished speaking, and it was finally their turn. The director of the Amethyst Civilization smiled and reminded, Proposal Cell 7984D66, submitted by the Blue Star Civilization. Representative, please make a brief statement. Bennett slowly stood up, took out the materials that he had prepared long ago, and started reading. He briefly explained the actions of the Avitan Soul's extremists, and his voice echoed in the hall. Then, he looked at Cisco and said with a heavy tone, we found an advanced psionic bomb in the spaceship of this group of extremists. Its power is enough to destroy the entire Blue Star. For such an advanced military weapon to appear in the hands of a group of extremists, we have reason to believe that these weapons came from the Star Pupil Protoss. Their actions were secretly instructed by the Star Pupil Protoss. We believe that you want to violate the Universal Treaty of Contact, 7th Revision, and destroy a civilization that is protected by the treaty. The sponsor of the Avitan Souls was the opponent of the Star Pupil Protoss, a star cluster civilization called Talos. However, Bennett insisted that the weapons were sponsored by the Star Pupil Protoss, and his goal was to make Cisco take the blame. Everyone present had a strange expression. They were all knowledgeable and knew that Cisco would not do such a thing. A surface civilization that had made an exception to join the association actually dared to slander another beyond grade A in their first meeting? The guts were too big. It was good to have a beyond grade A at home. They could do whatever they wanted. The 7-star cluster directors exchanged glances, and 6 of them glanced at the 7th person. This 7th person was the director of the Talos civilization. The director of the Talos civilization looked at Cisco and said with a smile that was not a smile, representative of the Star Pupil Protoss, what do you have to say? This is slander. Cisco's face was calm. I will not violate the treaty, and I have no reason to attack Blue Star. These extremists were not ordered by me. Then, how do you explain this? According to my speculation, this is what happened. Not long ago, planet Avidan was attacked, and the evolution cube was stolen. In the end, it was snatched away by Black Star. As he spoke, Cisco coldly glared at Han Xiao and said, due to the attack, a portion of the survivors of Avidan became extremists. In the eyes of the Star Pupil Protoss, the evolution cube is our national treasure. Black Star snatched away our national treasure, causing the extremists to transfer their hatred to him. Therefore, this matter is a private matter and has nothing to do with the Star Pupil Protoss. If Blue Star insists that I did it, please provide evidence. Han Xiao chuckled and finally said, the dead tell no tales. Do you want to clear your name with just a few words? The same goes for you. Since the dead tell no tales, you also want to slander me with a few unreasonable speculations, Cisco said coldly. The Talos director laughed and said, let's put this matter aside for now. Regardless of whether it was incited by the star pupil Protoss or not, these attackers are indeed your people. Right, Cisco? Cisco took a deep breath, nodded slowly, and said, although they are of the same race, but you don't have to say anymore. The nature of the star pupil holy race is different from other civilizations. Your race should be highly united, but under your rule, an extreme hatred organization has appeared. This is the result of poor management. The Talos representative interrupted him. This is our internal matter. I will start to clean up the Avidan souls and dismantle this extremist group as soon as possible. You have no right to interfere with other matters. Cisco's tone was stiff. If you need, as a friendly neighbor, we can also send troops to help you eliminate the extremist group. No need. Cisco was shocked. Who doesn't know what you're trying to do? There are so many people watching, and you actually dare to say it out loud. You are too shameless. The Talos director laughed and did not mind. He returned to the main topic. We will talk about your remedies later. Now, we are talking about your responsibility. These extremists are of your race, and when they were about to attack, they still had the citizenship of the star pupil Protoss. According to my opinion, the star pupil Protoss is responsible for this matter. In reality, be it being of the same race or citizenship, these factors were not important in a galaxy where people moved frequently. However, the Talos director was purposely trying to make things difficult for the star pupil Protoss. He was not the only director who did so. I think so too. The Amethyst director smiled and said, seconded. The other star cluster directors nodded. The Amethyst civilization spoke up for Blue Star because of Han Shao, while the other star cluster civilizations purely wanted to attack the star pupil Protoss. The star pupil Protoss had the support of the Arcane Church and was developing rapidly. They had the chance to become the 8th star cluster civilization in the Shattered Star Ring, so the others were not willing to share their benefits. Therefore, at this moment, they stood on the same side and used this as a pretext to make a fuss. The other representatives present were silent. Everyone knew that this was the 7 directors slandering one another. This situation was too rare, and no one was willing to interfere. At the end of the day, it was the star pupil Protoss' fault for wanting to blow up other people's planets. Of course, they would be targeted. Honestly speaking, if it were any of the civilizations present, if someone wanted to blow up their mother planet, they would also vent their anger on the other party for not keeping their mad dog on a leash. All of a sudden, Cisco seemed to have become the target of everyone's criticism. Bennett was shocked. He thought that he would at most argue with Cisco, but he did not expect so many people to speak up for them. He could not help but look at Han Shao. He had expected this. He knew that exposing this matter would give the other star cluster civilizations an opportunity to make a fuss. Furthermore, the Shattered Star Ring had long been divided up by the 7 star cluster civilizations, and they would definitely not be willing to share it with the newcomers. Therefore, even if he did not have any evidence, these directors would still speak up for him. These judges were not without a stand. Cisco's expression was ugly. It was not that he did not understand this logic, but he did not have the confidence to do so. After all, the other party was the victim, and he was indeed in the wrong. He could not help but hate the Avidan Souls organization. These B** stars did not care about causing trouble for the civilization at all, and even made him their scapegoat. It was really better to let a piece of barbecued pork evolve than to let them evolve. Then, how do you guys plan to settle this? Cisco asked. I think that you need to publicly apologize to Blue Star and give Blue Star some mental compensation, the Talos director said slowly. Compensation and apology are impossible, Cisco said with a deep voice. At most, I'll donate. Donations were also considered compensation, but the name was different, so the meaning was different. As the leader of the civilization, he was the image of the star pupil Protoss. He had to consider many aspects and could not publicly apologize for the private actions of an extremist organization, just like how Ghidorah would not apologize for the actions of Darkstar. Furthermore, Cisco was a beyond grade A, and doing so would cause him to lose a lot of prestige. Thus, he would not lower his head because of this. Bennett regained his senses. Under Han Zhao's signal, he braced himself and said, "We strongly condemn the actions of the star pupil Protoss and will not accept such an insincere outcome." Then, there's no need to talk about it. Sisko's eyes were cold. He looked at Han Zhao deeply before suddenly going offline and leaving the venue. The star pupil Protoss had the support of the Arcane Church, and his status was high. The Civilization Conference had limited restrictions on him and could not force him to lower his head. However, Sisko could not do whatever he wanted, and it was not without losses. After this incident, it would be much more difficult for the star pupil Protoss to seek cooperation in the future. He had lost the evolution cube, and the support of the Arcane Church had also weakened. Thus, this incident was very disadvantageous for the development of the star pupil Protoss. Not to mention, the Talos civilization would definitely publicize this incident and attack the reputation of the star pupil Protoss, as well as weaken his reputation as a beyond grade A. In Sisko's eyes, the culprit of all this was Han Zhao. If not for this guy's determination to frame him, he would not have encountered such a situation. At this moment, Sisko's hostility toward Han Zhao increased by another level. Han Zhao's interface also had a notification that the favorability of the star pupil Protoss had decreased from -800 to -1,250. Their relationship had changed from hostile to enemy. Sure enough, Sisko was furious. Han Zhao shook his head. Blue Star was his mother planet, and he could not swallow this insult. Anyway, Sisko and the Arcane Church would not give up on the evolution cube, so they were destined to be enemies. There was no harm in having a deeper hatred. If Blue Star was really bombed, Sisko would not apologize or compensate. He might even gloat. However, the battle of positions had nothing to do with right or wrong. Han Zhao did not feel that Sisko was in the wrong, and he did not care what methods he used. I wonder what kind of counterattack he will make. Han Zhao pondered. Blue Star was protected by the peace treaty, so Sisko would not attack anyone else. If he wanted a counterattack, he would only target himself. Aesop had said that the Arcane Church would send people to deal with him, and since Sisko could locate him, he would definitely be one of them. Han Zhao made up his mind. He had the people in his base keep an eye on Sisko's whereabouts, which was equivalent to indirectly monitoring the movements of the Arcane Church. At the same time, on the mother planet of the star pupil Protoss, Sisko disconnected the connection to the meeting with an ugly expression. After a moment of silence, Sisko sent a message to the Arcane Church. That matter. I agree. The Arcane Church had recently prepared to give him a mission. Sisko had originally been considering it, but now he had made a decision. Sisko's cold expression was reflected on the communicator screen. Black Star, you should stay in a flickering world and never come back. Chapter 828. Leaving halfway through the meeting showed that Psyker's actions were not very respectful to the members present. However, whether it was the 7-star cluster directors or the other members, they did not mind. Psyker was only using his actions to express his dissatisfaction when the star pupil holy race was publicly targeted. He would still be there in the next meeting. Since the main character had left, the proposal was temporarily shelved. Bennett sat down under the signal of the purple crystal director. The meeting continued, and the next proposal was brought up. The atmosphere in the meeting room became casual again. The subsequent proposals had nothing to do with him, so Han Zhao threw the remote projection into the backstage and went to browse the forums. After half a day, the first day of the meeting finally ended. Every time the Civilization Conference was held, it would usually take a few days to discuss the backlog of proposals. Han Zhao only planned to participate on the first day. He did not need to attend the next few days. Bennett was enough. Deactivating the remote projection, Han Zhao closed the forums and pondered. The star pupil Protoss was condemned by Blue Star. What happens next has nothing to do with Blue Star. Nothing actually happened, so they could not really do anything to Sisko. Han Zhao did not expect the star pupil Protoss to compensate or donate money. Blue Star's influence was too small. Even if they condemned the other party, Sisko would not feel anything. However, After this matter was brought up, Cisco did not face difficulties from Blue Star, but from the Talos civilization. The Talos civilization had secretly funded the Avitan souls so that they could cause trouble for the Star Pupil Holy race. Although they did not order the Avitan souls to attack planet Aquamarine, this unexpected situation was in line with their interests, and they could use this opportunity to cause trouble. Han Xiao asked Bennett to condemn the other party to provide an excuse for the Talos civilization. The Talos civilization understood this tacit understanding. They had wanted to deal with the Star Pupil Protoss for a long time, and they could appease Han Xiao by standing up for Blue Star. Therefore, Blue Star did not need to worry about what happened after that. He only needed to watch the Talos civilization operate from the sidelines. Han Xiao contacted Ames and asked her about Floating Dragon. The two of them chatted on the phone for half an hour before hanging up. Walking in front of the 3D star map, Han Xiao looked up at the image of the Garus star cluster. There was only a very small green area that had been explored so far. It was shaped like two toothpicks stuck in a green ball. It was the two long-distance passages that were under construction and the border star system that was being explored. There are still 3 months before Hardaway's task force can build a long-distance stargate. Han Xiao thought to himself as he rubbed his chin. According to his exploration plan, the first stage would be for the special task force to arrive at the eastern part of the Garus star cluster's 2D star map. With his understanding of the Garus star cluster, there should not be any disturbances like the Great Cosmos Core in the next 3 months. It should be a peaceful exploration period, and they should be able to explore 80% of the border star systems. Time was like quicksand in one's hand. It slipped through the gaps between one's fingers. 3 months later, on the mother planet of the Red Empire, in the ruler's office, Unravel sat with her back as straight as a javelin. She held a report in her hand and was reprimanding a trembling, high-ranking official in front of her. Her tone was solemn. The Radiant Federation is acting sneakily and infiltrating our territory. How did you deal with it? Are you just going to watch and not do anything? I only told you to be conservative, not to retreat. Come up with a plan right now. Let me think. This official wiped his sweat and said with difficulty. Unravel's eyes were serious. The exploration of the flickering world had already been going on for a few months, and the Radiant Federation had already begun to act. At the same time, they were pressuring the dynasty from all aspects, preparing to eat away at the dynasty's benefits, while the dynasty was focused on exploring the new star field. This was only the beginning. In the future, when the dynasty invested more resources and manpower into the exploration, the Radiant Federation would definitely become even more aggressive and make the dynasty's situation even more difficult. While all of this was within Unravel's expectations, it was still unavoidable. The Radiant Federation was a universal civilization on the same level, and the dynasty would not be able to get the best of both worlds. If they wanted to gain something, they would have to pay a certain price. Unravel was already mentally prepared for this. Beep beep. This time, the internal line suddenly rang. Your Excellency, the Chief Commander of the Exploration Army, Terakov, is on the line. Unravel's eyes moved slightly, and she waved her hand to get the official to leave. This official immediately felt as though he had been granted amnesty and hurriedly left the ruler's office, leaving only Unravel in the room. Connect. Unravel nodded. The next moment, Tarakov's remote figure appeared in the room and saluted Unravel. Tarakov, how is the exploration of the flickering world going? The exploration of the flickering world was the focus of the Red Empire's current strategy. Unravel was extremely concerned about the exploration and would listen to a report every once in a while. The information has already been sent to you. Let me explain the current situation to you. Tarakov opened his mouth and explained. While listening to the report, Unravel looked at the information and nodded. All in all, in the 3 star clusters of Renault, Crown, and Geru, the dynasty's exploration army and Clint's exploration team are doing well. On the other hand, the Black Star Corps' exploration team that chose the Geru star cluster has made great progress in the past 4 months. They have discovered a large number of rich resource planets and even took over the territory of a local organization, saving us a lot of effort. Furthermore, the Black Star Corps does not care about their own losses and is currently building long-distance stargates to make it more convenient for the exploration team. Terakov said, "Not bad, reliable ally." Urinril put down the information, and a look of satisfaction flashed through her eyes. Because there was a comparison, she was very satisfied with Han Zhao's efficiency. The Black Star Corps is an ally worth nurturing. Increase the support for them. Although Terakov seemed to have received some benefits and was always putting in good word for the Black Star Corps, as long as the work was done well, Urinril would not be bothered by the details. Other than that, there's something else that needs to be reported. Tarakov's tone suddenly turned serious. We have discovered traces of suspected stowaways. The stowaways that he was talking about were organizations that had secretly passed through the desolate universe belt and headed to the flickering world without the dynasty's permission. Urinril narrowed her eyes. Are you sure they are not natives? Tarakov shook his head. Although there aren't many clues, our troops stationed in the desolate universe belt of the flickering world have discovered high warp speed hyperdrive folds left behind by an unknown fleet. Clearly, they have reached the technological standard of a star cluster civilization. These stowaways will most likely arrive in the flickering world in a while. No, there might have already been people who arrived in the flickering world before them, but were not discovered by us. As expected, Urinril said calmly, the Radiant Federation, the Arcane Church, and those supercluster civilizations still made their move. I think that they will take a detour to avoid the 3 star clusters that we explored in the first phase, Terakov said. They will explore the star clusters in the depths of the star field before us, and secretly take over our star field to avoid meeting us. You're right. Send out troops to search the desolate universe belt between the shattered star ring and the flickering world, Urinril said slowly. Destroy the stargates that the enemy has secretly built. These stowaways had sent out vanguards to build their own secret stargates in the flickering world. This way, they would be able to quickly transport a large number of troops. Most of these stargates would be hidden in the vast, desolate universe belt between the 2 star fields. This was the reason why the Red Empire prohibited other organizations from privately using stargates to connect to the flickering world. The most effective way to deal with the stowaways was to destroy the secret stargates and let the dynasty firmly control the stargates. Only by ensuring the uniqueness of the stargate could they maximize the dynasty's benefits. However, Terakov shook his head. We need more manpower. I know. Urinril nodded. I will send more dynasty troops to the flickering world. It's time for the second batch of dynasty allies to move as well. At the same time, a stowaway fleet of the Arcane Church arrived at the border of the flickering world. We're finally here. Contact the team. Have they chosen a location in the desolate universe belt? Reporting, Captain. They're already in position. They're just waiting for us. Only 2 stargates could form a fast passage. The stowaway fleet would usually split up and choose a location for the secret stargate in the desolate universe belt. This was the entrance. The fleet that came to the flickering world was responsible for building the exit. Very good. Don't be discovered by the Red Empire's space monitoring buoys. We'll go around the Dawn Star Cluster and build a stargate in the desolate universe belt around the Geru Star Cluster. The Arcane Church also wanted to get their hands on the flickering world, but this was a long-term project, and they were not in a hurry. In comparison, the Arcane Church was more interested in the Evolution Cube. They had built a secret stargate near the Geru Star Cluster to make it easier to station troops. With a stargate, it would be easier to send in Beyond Grade as. After all, Beyond Grade as would not be willing to spend a few months slowly passing through the desolate universe belt. Black Star had already proven how difficult it was to deal with, and the Arcane Church had mobilized more than 1 or 2 Beyond Grades this time. Of course, the 3 universal civilizations were keeping an eye on each other's Beyond Grade as. Once there was any abnormal movement, they would be alerted. If they wanted to make a Beyond Grade as move stealthily, they would need a reason to confuse others. I've been staying up late recently, so I'm not feeling very well. I'll write less today to rest up and smooth out my thoughts. P.S. Lu Sun said it well. If people are killed, they will die. If they don't vote, their monthly votes will expire. It's the last day of the month. Just a small amount of monthly votes is enough. Chapter 829. Flickering World, Central Region of the Geru Star Cluster. Ever since the player expedition team received the legacy of the Great Cosmos Core and set up a long-distance stargate, Han Xiao had led his fleet to the central region of the star map. There were more famous planets in the central region of the star cluster than the border star systems, and their quality was much better. Among them was planet Jinyao, which was listed in the list of 200 flickering main planets. It was extremely prosperous in Han Zhao's previous life and was one of the dynasty's first-line ruling planets in the Geru star cluster. It was one of the unique landmark planets in the flickering world, and many people would visit it every year. There was also planet Resend, the core transportation hub of the Geru star cluster in Han Zhao's previous life. At its peak, it had more than 500 stargate entrances and was the transportation heart of the star cluster. Other than that, Han Xiao also occupied a large number of famous resource planets that were famous for producing all kinds of rare materials in his previous life. In Han Zhao's previous life, these famous planets had a very important position in the Geru star cluster. Maybe when the flickering world opened up in the future, the dynasty would take back these planets and redistribute the territories. However, during the exploration period, these planets were the territory of the Black Star Core, and the army had the right to share the special products of these planets. The exploration had already been going on for 4 months, and the progress of the various exploration teams was about the same. The Bloodshed Land was progressing steadily and was about to finish exploring the Jeritan star system. Although they had gained quite a lot, the results were all within the dynasty's expectations. In comparison, although Han Zhao's exploration team's progress in the first star system was slower due to their scattered exploration plan, because Han Xiao had found a large number of famous planets in his previous life, he had given the dynasty's upper echelons quite a surprise. Therefore, the dynasty favored him greatly and gave him more and more support. Han Xiao had heard more than once that the Clint exploration team had secretly imitated his method and sent out teams to explore planets in other regions. Unfortunately, they did not know the exact situation of the planets and did not gain much. Instead, they wasted time. In the past 4 months, the profits of the flickering world had gradually become obvious. The Black Star Core's profits in the flickering world had almost reached the sum of all the other businesses in the army. As more and more planets were explored by the army, the profits continued to snowball like a rolling snowball. Countless ownerless planets were waiting to be mined. That was why the flickering world was a huge development opportunity. The income of the army skyrocketed, and the flickering world exploration team helped the headquarters of the Shattered Star Ring. As the funds became abundant, Sylvia continued to expand under Han Zhao's instructions, recruiting more new members. The training camp also provided a large amount of fresh blood, and the headquarters sent more people to the exploration team. As for the players, as the number of resource planets increased, the guilds began to lack manpower and began to selectively mine resource points. The best resource planets were basically controlled by the 4 major guilds, and below them were the first-rate guilds. The Russian and Australian branches had been bullied enough. They no longer wanted to play on the same planet as the 4 giants and China's first-rate guilds. So, they chose to establish resource points on some of the weaker planets to compete with China's second and third-rate guilds. In the past 4 months, the average level of the players had increased by quite a bit. Among them, Maple Moon had jumped to level 113 because of the generous reward of the hidden mission. She was only 7 levels away from the maximum level. With Maple Moon as an example, the other players searched for hidden missions like crazy. Some of them actually found one and submitted it to their faction. Unfortunately, there was no second Bold Explorer skill fragment reward. Han Xiao did not stay idle in the past 4 months. The experience penalty of the evolution cube would last for another 7 to 8 months, so he was not in a hurry to level up. Every day, other than monitoring the exploration progress and browsing the forums, he would be in Machinery Workshop, constantly expanding the size of the Mech Legion. Now that there were more than 10 million Mech Legion soldiers, their performance was extremely strong. With the enhancement of his current mechanical force, such a Mech Legion had the ability to wipe out some relatively weak star system civilizations. Among the 5 superclasses, the Beyond grade, as of the Mechanic class, had the greatest destructive power to his civilization. The other 4 classes placed more emphasis on individual strength. Usually, only a Beyond grade A mechanic with an army could start a large-scale galactic war alone. In the command room of the bridge, Han Xiao stood in front of the 3D star map, staring at the communication channel, waiting for a special message. Today was a special day. The task force led by Hardaway was about to complete the construction of a long-distance Stargate. He was waiting for Hardaway's news. However, before Hardaway's news arrived, Tarakov's news arrived. Beep beep. Han Xiao took a look and helplessly picked up the call. Chief Commander, what's the matter? I have something to inform you. We found traces of stowaways. Stowaways? Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. It's probably those organizations that ignored the dynasty's announcement and wanted to enter the sealed flickering world to take a share of the loot. In his previous life, this was an event during the version update, and the players could only know about it from the background introduction. When the players participated, the flickering world had already been officially opened, and the other organizations had already obtained permission to enter. The stowaways were basically a thing of the past. According to the records of the Empire, they had engaged in a protracted battle with the stowaways during the exploration period. There were all sorts of chases and escapes, and the star field was simply too large. There were too many unexplored regions, and even the Empire was unable to eradicate the stowaways. Once a batch was eliminated, a new batch would appear after a period of time. Tarakov nodded. It should be the troops of some supercluster civilizations. You should pay attention to them. If you find traces of stowaways, remember to report to me. We need to find their secret Stargate, and we will ask your troops for help if necessary. Okay. As soon as he said that, a new mission popped up on the interface. Han Zhao's gaze shifted slightly, and he took a look. You have triggered the mission, Stowaways Clues, repeatable. Mission introduction. The new star field is a treasure trove, and any organization that has the ability to touch it will not be willing to watch the Red Empire enjoy the benefits alone. Even if the flickering world is the territory of the Red Empire in name, it will not be able to stop their ambitions. As an ally of the dynasty, the stowaways are also violating your interests. The dynasty needs your help. Mission requirements. Submit a valuable clue of the stowaways, kill a batch of stowaways, and destroy the secret Stargate of the stowaways. Mission reward. 2 million to 50 million experience. 50 to 700 dynasty contribution points. Remarks. This mission belongs to the Flickering World branch mission. This was a repeatable mission, and he would receive a reward every time he dealt with a stowaway. The reward was not bad, but what Han Xiao valued the most was the dynasty contribution points. However, the stowaways were elusive, and it was not that easy to find them. He could only rely on luck. Furthermore, these stowaways were not natives. If they built a secret Stargate, he would have to face the counterattack of a powerful fleet if he wanted to eliminate them. Han Xiao only planned to provide clues. He did not want to fight with a supercluster civilization. The dynasty, on the other hand, was not afraid of offending them and was suitable for this mission. Among these stowaways, there should be the Arcane Church. Han Xiao thought to himself. Aesop had prophesied that the Arcane Church would bring danger to him in the flickering world, and he was quite concerned about this. If the Arcane Church wants to deal with me, they will definitely send a large number of combatants. Because they need to accumulate their forces, they should not be able to do anything in a short period of time. However, I still have to be more vigilant, Han Xiao thought to himself. Cisco could locate him, so the Arcane Church would definitely let him join. Therefore, by paying attention to Cisco's whereabouts, he would indirectly know when the Arcane Church would make their move. It was a pity that the Observer's mark he had left on Cisco had been removed. Otherwise, things would have been much more convenient. Although Cisco could not remove the Observer's mark on his own, he could sense that he was being watched. When they fought, he knew that Black Star had done something to him. It had been more than half a year, and he could not ignore it for so long. He had long asked the people of the Arcane Church to help him remove the Observer's Mark. After all, Austin was not the only Beyond Grade A mage. Han Xiao told Terakov about his worries, and Terakov smiled as though he had expected it. The dynasty has also considered this possibility. The Arcane Church might snatch your evolution cube while you are in the flickering world. Therefore, the dynasty will closely monitor the movements of the Beyond Grade as of the Arcane Church. Furthermore, Her Excellency the ruler is preparing to send a second batch of people to the flickering world, including many of the dynasty's allies. At the same time, she will also send a Beyond Grade directly under the dynasty to follow you and protect you temporarily. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. A second batch of allies. His competitors were finally here. For the sake of the evolution cube, the dynasty had specially sent people to protect him. However, Han Xiao knew that the dynasty hoped that he would not run around with the evolution cube. After obtaining that ownerless universal treasure, I'll return to Planet Lighthouse and stay there for a while. Han Xiaoxin thought. Since he knew that the enemy might target him, Han Xiao decided to restrain himself. After all, the Arcane Church was not to be trifled with. To be safe, staying at the dynasty's outpost Planet Lighthouse was much safer than running around. Furthermore, this would also mean that he would be in the flickering world and could still support the army and supervise their exploration. Thank the ruler Urinril for me. While thinking about other things, Han Xiao did not forget to be polite. The ruler has recently reviewed our exploration progress. She is very satisfied with the results of your exploration and specifically expressed her appreciation for you. Terakov laughed. After chatting for a while, Han Xiao finally hung up. At this time, Hardaway's message finally arrived. After waiting for 4 months, the Stargate was finally completed. Well done. Han Xiao was overjoyed. With the Stargate, he could finally take away the ownerless universal treasure in the flickering world. Hardaway also expressed his resentment in the message. He was very unhappy that he had not sparred with Han Xiao for 4 months and wanted to return to Han Zhao's side immediately to be beaten up. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed and decided that when Hardaway returned, he would beat him up 3 times a day to satisfy his request. Han Xiao immediately ordered the main fleet to change direction and head toward the Stargate. This news quickly reached Seneco. During this period of time, he had gotten used to the irregular movements of Black Star's headquarters, so he was not surprised and did not suspect anything. Chapter 830. P.S. Just now, I looked at the update schedule with a guilty heart and realized that the last time I took leave was last December. This month, I haven't taken leave for more than 2 months in a row. Compared to last year, there seems to be some improvement. I think so. 1 day off for Godly Mechanic. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 831. Some scholars who studied the sociology of the universe believed that building a galactic society with order from scratch required a few prerequisites. First, there had to be a communication in the form of a universal war, and a portion of the civilizations had survived and had a certain level of understanding of each other. Second, there had to be one or a few powerful rulers who could suppress all disobedience and had the power to force the rules of the universe for other civilizations, forming order. Third, the scale of the distance between the universe and the universe had to be greatly reduced, which was the hyperdrive technology, Stargate technology, and universal quantum communication technology. In the eyes of some civilization development historians, these 3 technologies were the greatest inventions of the universal era, allowing civilizations countless light years apart to have the ability to communicate quickly. The entire explored universe thus formed a stable galactic society system. After exploring the flickering world for 4 months, including Han Xiao, the entire Black Star Corps agreed with this view. Hardaway's Special Task Force took 4 months to travel from the southern part of the Garu Star Cluster to the eastern part, But Han Zhao's main fleet only took less than 2 days to complete the 4-month journey through the stargates left behind along the way. In the eastern border star system of the Geru star cluster, the two fleets met in space. The spaceships of the Special Task Force were like swallows returning to their nest, embedding in the dock of the main fleet and completing the docking. Han Zhao waited in the command room of the bridge for a while, and very soon he saw Hardaway and his subordinates hurriedly walking over from the dock. Army Commander. Hardaway had an excited expression on his face. He opened his arms wide and pounced toward Han Zhao. Han Zhao's mouth twitched, and after hesitating for a second, he did not back away. He braced himself and hugged Hardaway. Their strong chest muscles made a thumping sound. "It's been 4 whole months," Hardaway said with an excited tone. "Is there a need to be so excited?" Han Zhao only felt Hardaway's arms tightly around his waist. With a helpless expression, Han Zhao casually patted his shoulder and pulled him away with one hand. However, he did not know that these 4 months had been extremely torturous for Hardaway. His body-hardening Esper ability required intense external stimulation to improve. As a Beyond Grade A seed, he was willing to become Han Zhao's subordinate for the chance to spar with a Beyond Grade A. After following Han Zhao, he could feel that his Esper ability, which had stagnated for a long time, had once again grown, which made him ecstatic. However, after being sent out for 4 months, his strength, which had finally shown signs of improvement, once again fell into silence. Furthermore, the Special Task Force did not even have a Calamity Grade officer, so he could not even find someone to spar with. For a battle maniac like him, this was simply unbearable. After 4 months, he had been bored to death. Now that he saw Han Zhao, Hardaway felt as though he had seen his family. In his eyes, there seemed to be a holy halo behind Han Zhao's head, and there seemed to be him surrounding him. He realized that he actually missed Han Zhao's fist so much. Hardaway was in a great mood. He then looked at Hela beside him, grinned, and opened his arms, wanting to hug her too. "Why don't you try touching me?" Hela glanced at him coldly, and the energy of death appeared in her eyes. Hardaway's face stiffened, and he awkwardly retracted his arms. "If not for the fact that I'm the Army Commander, a Beyond Grade A seed like me would not care about you at all." Hardaway is a Beyond Grade A seed after all. Don't be so rude with your words. However, Han Zhao felt that Hela's attitude toward the Black Star Guards was not too good, so he patted her shoulder and squeezed her shoulder blade. It feels pretty good." Hela's face immediately tensed up. She glanced at Han Zhao's palm and retracted the red energy overflowing from her eyes. "Oh." Hardaway greeted Fu Ding and the rest of the Black Star Guards before looking at Han Zhao again. "According to your instructions, the Special Task Force has set up a long-distance stargate. What do we do next?" Han Zhao did not answer directly. Instead, he snapped his fingers and summoned the 3D star map in front of everyone. He carefully searched through the star map and confirmed the planet with the ownerless universal treasure in the desolate universe belt outside the Geru star cluster. In his previous life, this planet was called Planet Amber. At this time, it was still a numbered planet without a name. "We're going to this planet." Aurora was curious. "Is there anything special about it?" Han Zhao nodded and casually made up a reason. Some time ago, when the army members were exploring the desolate planet, they found some intelligence left behind by aliens. It seemed to be the travel records of some explorers, and there was information about this planet. It said that there's a civilization on it. Since we're here, it's a good time to explore it. There was nothing wrong with this reason, since it was Han Zhao who said it. Even if everyone was a little surprised, they did not have many doubts. After all, with the Great Cosmos Core incident, they were not surprised by the existence of the natives of the flickering world. Han Zhao was not spouting nonsense. Planet Amber itself was the ruin of an extinct native civilization, and the universal treasure was stored in this ruin. Space-Time Amber was the name of this universal treasure. It was not created by the native civilization, but an item that had accidentally landed on this planet. It was once treated as a holy item by this civilization. In his previous life, as the dynasty's allies steadily developed it, The space-time amber eventually fell into the hands of one of the dynasty's allies who participated in the exploration. That ally was Raven Loudy, one of the Beyond Grade as that Han Shao had met when he went to the mother planet of the Red Empire, a member of the Ancient Ones who did not have a good relationship with Aesop. Later, Raven Loudy was defeated by another Beyond Grade A in the Calamity of the Supers version, and the space-time amber was snatched away by someone else. After countless storms, the space-time amber changed owners several times. One of the owners was even an expert from the World Tree civilization, and it finally fell into the hands of the Radiant Federation. The origin of the space-time amber was very mysterious. In his previous life, the players only learned about the origin of this thing from special intelligence channels in the later versions. It was not a big secret, but the reason for its formation was related to the legendary primordial ones, so there was a story behind it. As for the effect of the space-time amber, it could only be described as special. It would not bring about any bonuses to one's combat strength, but its effect was something that even Beyond Grade as would be afraid of. According to Han Zhao's memories of the storyline in his previous life, after the space-time amber was born, the number of Beyond Grade as that had fallen for it had exceeded the number of fingers on one hand. Now that the space-time amber was an ownerless item, no one other than himself knew of its existence. Since he could obtain it without much effort, Han Shao was naturally determined to obtain it. A few days later, the fleet arrived at Planet Amber and entered the atmosphere. The star was relatively close to this planet, and the sun was scorching hot. Looking down from the sky, the surface of Amber Planet was practically a desert. Waves of hot wind blew past, stirring up dust and sand that would not stop for a long time. Dark brown sandstorms wandered aimlessly on the ground, and no traces of civilization could be seen. Han Shao was about to send out the exploration spaceship when Aurora closed her eyes and sensed for a while. She then shook her head. There are no signs of life on this planet. Your life detection range can already cover an entire planet? Hella's eyes flickered, and a hint of surprise flashed through her eyes. Seeing everyone look over, Aurora smiled shyly, but there was a hint of pride in her tone. I've also improved. Not bad, not bad. Han Shao smiled with relief. Every time Aurora's strength increased, he would be very happy. After all, this meant that Aurora's healing power had increased. The effect of the Aurora character summon card was to recover to full health, but that was a product of the interface. Aurora's healing power was limited, and she needed to consume her own life force to activate her ability. His Beyond Grade A cells contained a terrifying amount of energy. With Aurora's current strength, the consumption of healing him to full health was extremely high. Perhaps after 1 or 2 times, Aurora would go limp. When Aurora reached the Calamity Grade, her endurance would increase greatly, and her milk would be more abundant, allowing him to be full. Upon hearing this, Fu Ding said, "There are no signs of life." Then, the civilization you mentioned might have already perished, leaving only ruins behind. Han Shao nodded. Looking at the vast expanse of yellow sand, he sent out a probe ship to sense the underground environment of the planet. In the dynasty's records, the ruins of the civilization where the space-time amber was located were buried under the yellow sand. As for the specific process of discovering the space-time amber, there were no detailed records, so he did not know the exact location. However, with the galactic-grade detection equipment here, it was only a matter of time before they found the civilization ruins. As expected, before Han Shao finished watching Hardaway and another Black Star Guard play a game of Wayne cards, the probe ship sent back news that many ruins suspected to be cities had been discovered under the desert. However, the probe ship did not find any special energy sources, and the energy radar was dead silent. No abnormal energy signals? The space-time amber should be on this planet. Maybe it hasn't been charged for so long, so there aren't any energy fluctuations. Han Shao looked at the ruins marked on the planet map and shook his head helplessly. Looks like I'll have to search all of them. TSK, why didn't the dynasty record the specific process of discovering the space-time amber? I still have to find it myself. After thinking about it, Han Shao ordered the fleet to wait in outer space for the time being while he brought the black star guards to the sky above the planet. Looking down at the ground beneath his feet, Han Xiao waved his hand, and a majestic mechanical force gushed out, stirring up waves of energy ripples. Behind him, a huge door of light opened, and inside it were densely packed mechanical soldiers. This was the secondary dimension military camp that he always carried with him. Clank, countless mechanical soldiers swarmed out, with Psionic Prime and thousands of other mechanical life forms at the front of the mechanical army, looking at Han Xiao. After releasing millions of mechanical soldiers, Han Xiao closed the secondary dimension military camp. The Mech Legion lined up neatly in front of him, covering the entire sky as if they were in a military parade. Search the ruins. Report to me if you find anything special. Also look for this thing at the same time. Han Xiao outlined the shape of the space-time amber in the quantum network and passed the order to all the mechanical soldiers through Philip. Who? The next moment, the mechanical army in front of him scattered like birds and beasts, splitting up and going into the yellow sand to explore the ruins. With so many useful mechanical helpers, Han Xiao did not want to waste his energy searching so many ruins himself. Master, we found a special phenomenon. Not long after, Psionic Prime sent back a good news in pictures. Han Xiao took a look. In the picture was a huge room that looked like some kind of hall. The walls and pillars were filled with model murals. In the middle of the room was a large black disc with integrated circuit, matrix-like patterns. It might be a product of a mixture of magic and technology. On the ground around the disc were many translucent circular crystals, each about 5 meters tall. Inside them were creatures of the same species. Their bodies did not have any signs of decay, but their expressions and movements were all frozen. There were no life signals, as if they were creatures frozen in amber. This phenomenon is the effect of the space-time amber. Han Xiao was stunned. He had been a planet amber in his previous life, but there were only ruins there at that time. There were no creatures that had turned into amber specimens at all. These creatures should be the race of this extinct civilization. Raven Loudy might have taken these specimens away when he found the space-time amber back then. However, this was also good news. It meant that he was not far away from the space-time amber. Han Xiao ordered the fleet to descend. The spaceships worked together and sucked the desert dry with their tractor beams, revealing the ruins where Psionic Prime was. The group quickly descended and landed in the ruins. They followed Psionic Prime's signal all the way to the center of the ruins, observing the city as they walked. Although the ruins were heavily eroded by time, they could still barely restore the original appearance of this civilization. The buildings were continuous, and the modeled patterns could still vaguely show the beauty of the past. This civilization seemed to have quite a high artistic attainment. It should have been a pretty beautiful civilization when it was alive, Fu Ding said. Maybe. Han Xiao did not deny it. Very soon, they arrived at the center of the ruins. This was an extremely huge fortress. It looked like a super large safe house or shelter made of countless hard materials. Psionic Prime's troops were in this fortress. Han Xiao and the others quickly entered the hall shown in the picture. After a rough scan, they realized that there were probably no less than 20,000 amber bodies here. What are these things? They look a little like amber. Hardaway curiously touched one of the amber next to him. The feeling was very strange. He could not feel the temperature of the amber, but his hand could not move an inch closer. Han Xiao casually walked in front of one of the amber and looked at the creature inside. These creatures should be mammal-type carbon-based creatures. They looked furry, and their facial features looked a little like sloths. They were about 1 meter tall and maintained the expression before they were frozen. Their eyes were wide open, and their eyes were filled with anxiety and uneasiness. Turning around to look at Hela, Han Xiao pouted. Try attacking them. Swoosh! Hela did not say anything. A beam of death energy shot out from her eyes and bombarded one of the amber. The next moment, something strange happened. Although the amber was sent flying, it was not damaged at all. The energy that Hela had released spread out on the smooth surface of the amber, and all of it was deflected. There was not a single trace of destructive force on the amber. It was as if the energy was like a water droplet, and the amber was like a lotus leaf, not absorbing water at all. Hela frowned. She did not believe it. Her death energy was highly condensed, and she was ready to attack again. Seeing this, Han Xiao stopped her. All right, you don't have to try anymore. Otherwise, this room is going to collapse because of you. Hela had no choice but to retract her energy. This thing is actually immune to my attacks. Even my mental damage did not penetrate it. It's not just mental damage. Han Xiao stretched out his hand and pressed on one of the amber. Mechanical force surged out, and lightning only flowed on the surface of the amber. The amber did not show any signs of being burnt. To be exact, this thing should be immune to all kinds of energy and will not be damaged. Even brute force can only send it flying and will not cause any damage to it. Han Xiao lifted one of the amber with one hand and weighed it twice. It was not heavy, so he put it down and shook his head. Even a beyond grade A, or the strongest planetary obliteration weapon of a universal civilization, will not be able to cause any damage to this amber. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. How can there be such a strong material in the world? Even a beyond grade A can't break it? That's impossible. Could it be? Hela had a flash of inspiration. This is another space wonder. Han Xiao stroked his chin and pretended to guess. You can say that. It feels the same as the evolution cube. This is also a man-made product. He was not very clear about the principle behind the formation of this amber, but it was a space wonder. Just like the evolution cube, it was very difficult to explain. According to the information in his previous life, this amber seemed to have changed the nature of time and space, causing a small piece of space-time to materialize, forming an effect similar to that of amber, wrapping an object within. The object wrapped in the space-time amber would be isolated from reality, as if it existed in a different space where the scale of time would not advance or retreat. The effect was like frozen space-time. However, according to common sense, the body of an object wrapped in amber should not change. Just like in a sleeping pod, their lifespan would be long or even infinite, and their thoughts should also be frozen. However, according to the description of the NPCs in his previous life, being wrapped in the space-time amber, they would not be able to control their body, and their energy would not be able to penetrate the amber from the inside. However, in reality, their consciousness would still be active, and they could even observe the changes in the outside world through their vision and hearing. They could even sense the passage of time in the outside world, just like being trapped in their body. This was a paradox in common sense, and it was also one of the important reasons why it was regarded as a space wonder. Only those who were imprisoned in the space-time amber for too long would have their thoughts stagnate, and in the end, they would erase themselves and give up on thinking. The stronger the person, the longer they would be able to last. Therefore, this thing could create a cage that could imprison any creature, and there was no need to worry about the prisoner escaping. At the same time, it was also a form of torture. Even if the target was a beyond grade A, it would still be the same. The only problem was that the activation process of the space-time amber was relatively long, and it would be extremely difficult to trap a beyond grade A. If this thing falls into the hands of the enemy, it will be a huge threat to me as well. If it falls into my hands, I will have one less ability that I need to be wary of. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. Han Xiao turned to look at the black disc in the middle of the room that was about 10 meters in diameter. After observing the array patterns on the disc for a while, he roughly confirmed that this was an energy transmission and activation circuit. It seems like this thing needs energy to be activated. Han Xiao waved his hand, and Psionic Prime obediently turned into many hovering guards, shooting out light beams toward the disc. The disc suddenly shook, and some sort of device seemed to have been activated. The circuit lit up in the blink of an eye, and the dust on it fell. In the next moment, the disc lit up, revealing its true function. It was a screen. A video began to play on the screen, and a creature of this civilization appeared on the screen and slowly spoke. At this time, the translator had yet to record this language, so no one could understand what it was saying. However, this did not stop them from understanding the images on the screen. Scenes of this civilization before its demise flashed across the screen, as though it was narrating the history of this civilization from the very beginning. From primitive creatures, learning how to use tools, gradually developing airplanes, hovering cars, and even trying to build interstellar spaceships. The cities were beautiful, and the people lived in peace. Unfortunately, due to the abnormal activities of the fixed stars, the living environment of the planet changed drastically, and a disaster that was enough to wipe out all life on the planet swept across the entire planet. In order to preserve their civilization, they used a holy artifact to seal their people and a large number of lives, storing all the information of their civilization in a database. Every ruin had a database set up to ensure that anyone who came later would be able to discover them. The appearance of that holy artifact was the space-time amber in his memory. He had not found the wrong place. Han Xiao secretly heaved a sigh of relief and continued watching. Using the space-time amber required a large amount of energy, and it was very difficult for a surface civilization. This civilization had used the power of their race to charge it, almost draining their energy. This was why they had used the space-time amber so many times. It was not just this city ruin. Every ruin had many amber bodies. While everyone was watching the video, the teams exploring the other ruins had also discovered more amber. At the end of the video, the location of the space-time amber was finally mentioned. It seemed to be stored in a large city, but this was the city before the civilization was destroyed. It was unknown which ruin it was in now. Let's get Philip to copy their database first. As long as we decide for the language, we'll know what this video says in detail. We can also directly locate the ruins where the space-time amber is located according to the map. Han Xiao was about to take action when a notification popped up on the interface that he had triggered a mission. You have triggered the hidden mission, Traces of Existence. Mission Introduction. Due to the abnormal changes in the star, a world-ending catastrophe swept through the Yuzrian civilization. Before their destruction, the Yuzrians chose two paths at the same time. They wanted to use the holy artifact to preserve a small number of their people so that they could survive the disaster and rebuild their civilization in the future. Therefore, they have been waiting for a successor to undo the effects of the holy artifact for them. However, if no one came, the Yuzrians were willing to become eternal specimens and preserve all the information of their civilization to this day, leaving traces of their existence in the vast universe. And you are the visitor they have been waiting for many years. Unfortunately, endless time has already chosen their final fate for them. Mission requirements. Use the holy artifact of the Yuzrian civilization and remove the effects of the holy artifact on all the Yuzrians. Reward: 1. 5 billion EXP, 1 legendary point, 1 random reward, plus 780 exploration points, 1 bold explorer skill fragment. Chapter 832. Hidden Mission. Han Xiao froze for a moment, but when he saw the mission reward, his face changed into a look of surprise. A second bold explorer skill shard. Han Xiao turned his head to look at Fu Ding, who was focused on the recording of the Yazur civilization. While Fu Ding was not paying attention, Han Xiao went up to him and shook his shoulders. What were you doing? Fu Ding looked at the happy Han Xiao in confusion. You're awesome. Han Xiaoxin was extremely happy. In his eyes, Fu Ding seemed to be glowing. Ah, this dazzling European light. Hidden missions had a small chance of giving out bold explorer skill shards. In the past 4 months, the players had discovered many hidden missions and shared them with him. However, he had never triggered this reward, and the Goddess of Luck was still looking down on him. However, now that she had personally brought Fu Ding here, the Goddess of Luck would probably take the initiative to lift up her skirt and let Fu Ding see the holy light. Han Xiao could not help but sigh. His charm was off the charts, his luck was extremely good, and he had a wife that was easy to get along with. Behind him, the Goddess of Luck was willing to be his mistress. Fu Ding was probably the biggest winner in life in the Black Star Corps. Although Nero also had the advanced luck glow, it could also arrange the Lady Luck goddess, who despised the poor and loved the rich, into 108 different poses. However, he was not handsome. Compared to Fu Ding, Nero was like a little brother. You're still the most reliable. Han Xiao patted Fu Ding's shoulder with a gratified expression. Fu Ding's face was filled with black, white question marks. Seeing that everyone was looking at him with a puzzled expression, Han Xiao used a calming buff on himself, coughed, and casually explained. This civilization used their holy item to create this special amber. Other than us, no one else has set foot on this planet, so this holy item is ours. I guess this is another universal treasure. The others did not know beforehand that Han Xiao had come to this planet with a clear goal, so they nodded and did not doubt him. Han Xiao had the mechanical army search and found the database. Philip copied all the information in it and finally deciphered the language of the Yazur civilization. After updating the translator's language pack, everyone returned to the Black Disk and watched the recording of the Yazur civilization again. This time, they finally understood the content. I am the leader of the Yazrians, the lucky visitor. When you see this video, we may have already perished. No matter who you are, please finish watching this video. The mission introduction on the interface had already explained the general situation. Han Xiao listened to it again to perfect the details. The video introduced the situation of the Yazrian civilization. This was all expected. At the end of the video, the Yazrians requested the visitor to complete 2 tasks. One was to unravel the effects of the space-time amber. For this, they explained their research on the space-time amber in detail. However, the Yazrian civilization did not have much research on this extraterrestrial object that was beyond their understanding. The second thing was that if the Yazrians went extinct, they requested the visitor to preserve the information of the Yazrian civilization and leave behind traces of their existence. They had been in the universe for many years, and they were already used to the destruction of civilizations. The universe was like this, with new species being born at every moment and old species being destroyed. If they could feel everything, they would not be able to do anything else every day. However, every civilization was a miracle of life. Their existence was their dignity, and they would still respect the last wish of a civilization. However, before that, they had to get down to business first. With the translation, the location of the ruins where the space-time amber was clear. Han Xiao had the mechanical army bring out all the amber from each ruin and gather at the location of the space-time amber. Everyone flew very quickly, and it did not take long for them to land at the ruins where the space-time amber was. Following the instructions in the image, Han Xiao came to an empty room in the central sanctuary of this ruin. A huge wall painting appeared in front of him. It was about 8 meters tall and 30 meters long, and the history of the Yazrians was painted on it. One of the pictures was of a black meteorite-like object falling from the clouds. A group of people below looked up. Han Xiao controlled his mechanical force and floated up. He came before this painting and reached out to touch the meteorite on the painting. His palm pressed against the wall, and his energy blew away the thick layer of dust. The dust was blown away. Han Xiao exerted force with his 5 fingers and broke the image of the meteorite. Rocks and soil fell. He dug out a pale, white crystal from behind the wall, which was exactly the same shape as the meteorite image. Looking at the white crystal in his hand, Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. This seemingly ordinary crystal, or was the core of the space-time amber? It was hidden in this painting by the Yazrians, and the mechanical army could find it with 3-dimensional scanning. However, it would obviously take more time. You have received space-time amber. Space-time amber, a space wonder item of unknown origin. It can freeze space-time and form an amber-like substance that can be used to wrap various objects. Energy consumption will vary according to the size of the amber. Current energy, 0 inch got it. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. This was the easiest universal treasure to obtain. After all, other than himself, no one else knew of its existence. This is the benefit of having an advantage in information. Han Xiao smiled. He landed on the ground, and everyone immediately surrounded him, sizing up the space-time amber curiously. This is the holy item that can create amber that can block all attacks. Hela sized up the space-time amber and asked, "Why is there no energy reaction at all? This thing needs to be charged before it can be used." Han Xiao explained. He then controlled his cells to spew out energy into the space-time amber in his hand. Boom! An invisible shockwave exploded from Han Xiao's body like a hurricane. This was the aura of Han Xiao when he released all his energy, and dust flew up in the room. The mechanical force surged into the space-time amber, and the dim space-time amber gradually lit up. In the past 4 months, Han Xiao had already mastered Heber's stellar furnace training and spent 3.9 billion experience. His energy limit had permanently increased by more than 17,000, which was very worth it for him. The space-time amber was like a bottomless pit, and its energy value slowly increased. The conversion method of the space-time amber's energy value was independent. Using the space-time amber required a large amount of energy, but to a mechanic who had mastered psionic energy, they had as much energy as they wanted. Han Xiao thought about it and did not use his own energy anymore. He took out a few psionic reactors and used them as chargers, connecting them to the space-time amber through energy transmission pipes and continuously charging it. The space-time amber seemed to have no limit to the amount of energy it could store, so he was not afraid of it exploding. After charging, the space-time amber immediately had an energy reaction. Han Xiao held the space-time amber in his hand and could feel the energy inside. The way to use the space-time amber was very simple. He just needed to activate the energy inside. The way the Yasser civilization used it was rather crude and did not have much reference value. Han Xiao remembered that the owners of the space-time amber in his previous life had a better way of using it. They could create a special activation device that resonated with the space-time amber's frequency and wrap it around it. Then, they could use their nerves to control the space-time amber. This way, they could use their consciousness to control the space-time amber, and the control would be more sensitive and detailed. With Han Xiao's current machinery level, it was very easy for him to create the activation device. But of course, now was not the time. He was not in a hurry to test the space-time amber's ability and could complete the hidden mission first. The group walked out of the central sanctuary of the ruins. All the Yasser amber had been moved to this ruin by the mechanical army, and there were so many of them that they could not see the end of it. Han Xiao came in front of a Yasser amber, grabbed the main body of the space-time amber, and slashed through the transparent amber that was immune to all attacks without any resistance. The main body of the space-time amber could easily pass through amber created by itself and would not be affected by the frozen space-time. Pop! After being slashed open by the main body, the amber dissipated in the air like a bubble. The Yasser person inside immediately fell to the ground after being separated from the amber. Aurora hurriedly helped him up and said in surprise, "There's a sign of life. He's still alive. His soul has already died. Although his body is still alive, he's already a living dead." Hela shook her head. Unlike Aurora, she could sense the soul of life. Although this Yasser person's body was still alive, it was an empty shell. Han Xiao scanned him. Due to the characteristics of the space-time amber, this Yasser person's body remained in the state before it was frozen. Although his brain had stopped functioning, it did not show any signs of exhaustion and was still alive like the body. This meant that the brain was also frozen. However, if the brain was also frozen, then there should not be any mental activity. He guessed that since the space-time amber did not consume any physical energy, perhaps it was because it consumed soul energy to support mental activity. Then, the reason for the death of consciousness was the exhaustion of soul energy. The stronger the individual, the more soul energy they had, so they could last longer. That's not impossible. Thinking of the origin of the space-time amber, Han Xiao did not feel that this phenomenon was strange. The effect of the space-time amber came from the Esper ability of a primordial one, which was a super high-risk Esper ability freeze space-time. Most of the abilities on the super high-risk Esper ability list existed, and this primordial one was the first Esper to be discovered with the ability to freeze space-time. Abilities like Smash Varuto were very rare, and it was also a high-level forbidden spell that was extremely difficult to master in the mage class. This primordial one served an advanced civilization and died in battle. Another primordial one with the ability to rewrite the nature of the existence of objects was his partner at that time. They turned his body into an indestructible crystal and buried him in the universe. However, the crystal might have absorbed some strange cosmic radiation during its countless years of wandering. Not only did it retain the ability to freeze space-time, but its ability also mutated and became a space wonder. This was the origin of the space-time amber. The players only knew about it in the later versions. Putting away his thoughts, Han Xiao used the space-time amber to remove the seal on all the Isrians. After checking, not a single soul was still alive. Sigh, they're all dead. Fu Ding shook his head and sighed. Han Xiao originally had some hope, thinking that there might be some protagonists among the Isrians who could survive, but unfortunately, there was none. Perhaps no one could escape death in the face of time. You have removed the effect of the space-time amber on all the Isrians. Traces of existence completed. You have received 5 trillion EXP and 780 exploration points. You have received 1 random reward. You have received 1 legendary point. Han Xiao sighed. Philip, move these bodies onto the ship, burn them, and bury them in the universe. Fu Ding looked over. Aren't you going to use the space-time amber to leave a sample? Their souls will disappear with the civilization. Let their bodies be free as well. Han Xiao shook his head. He had already scanned the data of the Isrians' bodies, and there was nothing special about them. Furthermore, the space-time amber had not appeared yet, so he planned to use it as a trump card and did not want to leave any clues behind. He still remembered that he was a member of the Space-Time Research Association. This association kept the information of every extinct civilization and displayed it to outsiders so that more people could understand the civilizations that had once existed in this universe. Giving this information to the Space-Time Research Association should be a better place for this civilization. Master Hum, do you want me to upload the information of the Yezrian civilization to the Space-Time Research Association's database? Go ahead. Han Xiao nodded. With the space-time amber in hand, the group returned to the fleet and set off. In different spaceships, the corpses of the Yezrians were sent into the incinerator and scattered into the universe. The fleet left behind a trail of embers that looked like a trail of sparks. The fleet entered hyperdrive mode, and Han Xiao temporarily rejected Hardaway's invitation to wrestle. He locked himself in the machinery modification room and prepared to create a convenient device for using the space-time amber. Instruments were connected to the space-time amber and were measuring its parameters. Han Xiao stood at the side and looked down at the space-time amber that was constantly emitting a halo. This is the second universal treasure I've obtained, and it's equivalent to a new trump card. The evolution cube has the effect of gene evolution, and the space-time amber can freeze time. Han Xiao thought to himself. The evolution cube could be used to build relationships, and the space-time amber could be used as a deterrent. This time, Han Xiao suddenly had an idea. Since the space-time amber could block the transmission of energy if he wrapped up the evolution cube, would Cisco not be able to sense it? This feels promising. Anyway, I don't usually use the evolution cube, and I can just remove it when I need to use it. I just don't know if this will be able to stop Cisco. However, the Arcane Church will most likely not give up. Han Xiao pondered. He planned to install a convenient device for the space-time amber first before testing the feasibility of this idea. Anyway, to him, building a small device would not take more than a few minutes. Putting this matter aside for the time being, Han Xiao opened the interface and looked at the skill list. He had already obtained the 2 skill fragments of Bold Explorer. This skill had been activated, and he would be able to obtain some information when exploring the unknown and identifying items. The cooldown time is 7 days, and the side effect is to reduce luck for 14 days. TSK, where would I have luck to reduce? All the side effects of luck are nothing to me. Han Xiao smiled proudly. Wait a minute, this does not seem to be something to be proud of. Turning around, Han Zhao's eyes focused. He might as well test the effect of this skill on the space-time amber. He knew the origin of the space-time amber, and he could use it to test the accuracy of this skill. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.